Hello and thank you for joining for tonight's stories. I hope you enjoy. Below the still waters. The safety line snapped with a sound like a gunshot underwater. Marcus Chen felt the vibration travel up the braided nylon before his brain registered what had happened. One moment he was descending through the green murk of Lake Tenkler, his tether connecting him to the dive platform 30 feet above, his dive light cutting a narrow cone through the sediment-thick water. The next moment, the tension vanished. The line went slack. He grabbed for it instinctively, gloved fingers closing on empty water. The severed end drifted past his mask, frayed, yes, but wrong. Not cut, not torn. The fibers splayed outward like the petals of some obscene flower, each strand ending in a bulbous, puckered deformation that his diving instructor's voice, distant now, academic, identified as the signature of extreme pressure, crushing pressure, the kind that shouldn't exist 30 feet down in a recreational Oklahoma lake. Marcus kicked for the surface. His training screamed at him to ascend slowly, to avoid the bends, to follow proper protocol. But his hindbrain, the ancient part that had kept his ancestors alive in the dark places of the world, knew better. Something was down here. Something had bitten through a half-inch nylon safety line rated for 2,000 pounds of tensile strength. He didn't see it coming. The impact drove the air from his lungs in a burst of silver bubbles that raced toward the distant surface. Some things, wrapped around his legs with the cold, muscular insistence of industrial cables. Suckers. The word surfaced through his panic like a corpse through ice. Suckers, but wrong. Too large, too numerous. The standard octopus had 2 rows of suction cups per arm, 8 arms total. What gripped Marcus had rows upon rows, spiraling around his thighs in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, almost linguistic, like cursive writing in a language older than the lake itself. He had time to think. This isn't possible. Lake Tenkler was man-made, created in 1952 by damming the Illinois River. There were no native cephalopods in Oklahoma, no giant squid, no krakens waiting in freshwater reservoirs. This was a place of bass boats and jet skis, of teenagers drinking cheap beer on pontoon boats, of retirees casting lines for crappie at dawn. Then the thing pulled. Marcus Chen, 34 years old, father of 2, former Navy salvage diver with 300 documented recoveries, disappeared into the darkness below. The last thing the surface world saw of him was his dive light, tumbling end over end through the green murk, its beam illuminating brief glimpses of something vast and pale retreating into the trenches that the Army Corps of Engineers had carved into the lakebed 70 years ago. The light went out. Above, on the dive platform, his tender, a 22-year-old named Darnell who had taken this job because it paid better than the Dollar General and didn't require a drug test, stared at the slack line for 11 seconds before he started screaming. Dr. Elena Walters drove through the night with her windows down, letting the Oklahoma heat bake the last of the Xanax from her system. The radio played something country and mournful, all steel guitar and lyrics about lost love and Jesus, but she wasn't listening. She was watching the road unfold ahead like a black ribbon, trying not to think about why she was driving to Tenkler at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. The email had arrived at 11:47 p.m. She'd been awake, of course. Sleep had become a theoretical concept since the incident at Monterey, something other people discussed while she watched the ceiling fan rotate through the darkness of her rented Tulsa apartment. The message was brief, almost desperate. Dr. Walters, we have a situation at Lake Tenkler, 3 drownings in 7 days. The 4th victim was a professional diver. Something is happening in the water that we cannot explain. Your expertise in cephalopod behavior is urgently required. The state of Oklahoma will compensate you at triple your previous consulting rate. Please contact me immediately. Sheriff Thomas Blackwood, Cherokee County. She hadn't called. She'd just gotten in her car and driven, because calling would have meant thinking, and thinking would have meant remembering the Pacific, and the tank, and the thing that had looked back at her through the acrylic with an intelligence that had no right to exist in something with no spine, no cortex, no evolutionary precedent for what she had witnessed. Alina had been a rising star once. Tenured at 32, the youngest recipient of the Marine Biological Society's Distinguished Research Award, author of 17 papers on octopus cognition and the controversial consciousness without centralized processing hypothesis. She'd been on track to revolutionize the field, to prove that intelligence wasn't a ladder with humans at the top but a sprawling web, a network of different solutions to the problem of surviving in a hostile universe. Then came the giant Pacific octopus at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, a specimen that shouldn't have existed, 43 pounds, nearly double the typical adult size. She'd spent 6 months studying it, running maze experiments, mirror tests, problem-solving challenges. It had learned to open child-proof containers in under an hour. It had escaped its tank 3 times, each time found in a different exhibit, each time having navigated through drainage systems that should have been impossible for a creature of its size. And it had watched her. That was the part she couldn't explain, the part that had cost her her career. The way it would position itself at the front of the tank when she entered the room, not feeding time, no external stimulus. The way its pupils slitted, alien, utterly unlike mammalian eyes, would track her movements with something that couldn't be called anything but recognition, interest, intent. The final incident had happened on a Tuesday. She'd been running a communication experiment trying to establish a symbolic language using colored shapes and food rewards. The octopus, she'd named it Archimedes stupidly, affectionately, had solved the final puzzle in 14 seconds, then done something unprecedented. It had retreated to the corner of its tank, gathered its arms into a configuration that resembled nothing so much as a spiral galaxy, and begun to change color in waves, red to black to white to red, at precisely 60 beats per minute. Alina had recognized the pattern. It was her resting heart rate, monitored by the fitness tracker she wore on her wrist. The octopus had been watching her, yes, but more than that. It had been studying her, learning her. And when she had leaned close to the glass, mesmerized by the display, it had struck. Not the tank, her. Somehow, impossibly, the octopus had projected a jet of water through a gap in the tank's filtration system, no wider than a pencil. The stream had hit her directly in the face, in her eyes, and for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, she had seen something in the animal's gaze that went beyond animal cognition, beyond biological imperative, into territory that her scientific training had no framework to process. She had screamed, fallen backward. The research team had found her on the floor, sobbing, insisting that the octopus had smiled at her. They'd put her on administrative leave, then medical leave, then after the psychiatric evaluation they declined to renew her contract. Stress-induced hallucinations, the report said, possible PTSD from overwork. She tried to publish her observations, but the journals wouldn't touch it. Lacks empirical rigor. Anecdotal evidence insufficient. Damaging to the author's previous reputation for methodological soundness. 6 months later, she was living off her savings in a state she barely knew, taking consulting jobs that no reputable scientist would touch, cryptid investigations, sea monster sightings, the kind of work that paid cash and asked no questions about your credentials or your sanity. And now this, something in a lake, something that had killed 4 people in a week, something that had left suction cup bruises on the victims' bodies. Alina pulled into the parking lot of the Tenkler State Park Marina at 3:15 a.m. The place was lit like a stadium, emergency vehicles clustered around the dock, where a dive platform bobbed gently in the dark water. She could see the sheriff immediately, a heavy man in his 50s, face carved from the same granite as the Ozark Hills, standing with his arms crossed while a young deputy tried to hand him coffee. "Dr. Walters," he called as she approached, not waiting for her to reach him. "You're the marine biologist." former marine biologist. Don't care. He thrust a file folder at her. 4 victims. First was a teenager, Cody Harjo, 19 years old, went swimming at midnight with his girlfriend. She made it to shore. He didn't. They found his body 3 days later, snagged on a submerged tree 200 yards from where he went under. Alina opened the folder. The first photograph showed a young man, Native American, handsome, frozen in death with his mouth open in a scream that had never reached air. But it wasn't his face that made her breath catch. It was his legs. His thighs were covered in circular bruises, each one the size of a $50, arranged in spiraling patterns that climbed from his knees to his hips. "Suction marks," she whispered. "That's what the coroner said. But here's the thing, doctor, those marks are too big, too strong. A giant Pacific octopus can leave a bruise, sure, but nothing like this. These ruptured capillaries, these are crush injuries." "Show me the others." The second victim was a fisherman, 62 years old, found floating near the dam. Same bruising pattern but concentrated on his arms this time, as if something had grabbed him and held him under. The third was another teenager, a girl this time, 15 years old, who had fallen from a party boat. Her body had never been recovered, but a piece of her swimsuit had washed up, torn and stained with something that wasn't blood but wasn't anything the crime lab could identify either. And the fourth, Marcus Chen, professional diver, safety line severed, dive light recovered but camera missing, presumed dead but no body found. "When did the fourth incident happen?" Alina asked. "Tonight, 6 hours ago." Blackwood's voice was flat, controlled, but she could hear the fear underneath. "That's why I called you. Whatever this is, it's escalating, it's learning." "Learning?" The first victim was a swimmer, someone in the water. The second was in a boat but close to the edge. The third fell from a boat, but we think she was pulled. There were marks on the railing, something strong enough to bend aluminum. And now this. A diver, 30 feet down. Something that can cut a safety line and drag a trained professional into the dark. He turned to face the lake. In the pre-dawn darkness, Lake Tenkler was a sheet of black glass, reflecting the stars with a clarity that seemed obscene given what lurked beneath. Alina followed his gaze, trying to see past the surface, trying to imagine what could be waiting in the trenches. "The Caddo have stories about this lake," Blackwood said quietly. "Stories that predate the dam, stories about a place where the water was hungry." "Every culture has water monster myths," Alina said automatically, the academic response. But even as she said it, she was thinking of Archimedes, of the intelligence that had studied her heartbeat and learned to mimic it. "This isn't myth, doctor. This is happening, and I need you to tell me what we're dealing with." Alina looked at the photographs again, at the spiral patterns of bruises, at the way they seemed almost deliberate, almost decorative. She thought of octopus arms, lined with hundreds of individual suckers, each one capable of independent taste and touch. She thought of the way they hunted, not with speed but with patience, with strategy, with a problem-solving capability that rivaled many mammals. And she thought of the thing in the photograph, the thing that had left marks too large, too strong, too organized to be any species known to science. "I need to see the dive site," she said, "and I need to talk to the survivor, the girlfriend. Her name is Sarah Whitebird. She's at the hospital in Tahlequah, sedated, but there's something you should know before you talk to her." Blackwood reached into his pocket and pulled out a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a piece of fabric, blue nylon, waterlogged, stained with something dark. "This was wrapped around Marcus Chen's severed safety line. We thought it was part of his equipment at first, but it's not. It's skin." Alina took the bag, held it to the light. The material was translucent, slightly iridescent, covered in a pattern of tiny bumps that she recognized immediately. "Chromatophores," she breathed, "pigment cells, this is cephalopod skin, but it's wrong, the texture is wrong, it's too thick, too structured. Like someone grafted human skin onto an octopus." She looked up at him, at the fear in his eyes that he was trying so hard to hide. Or the other way around. The sun was beginning to rise over the lake, turning the black water to blood red, then to gold. But Alina could feel it now, the presence below, the watching, the waiting. Something was down there, something that had been sleeping for a very long time. And it was waking up. Sarah Whitebird was 17 years old, Cherokee, with the kind of beauty that made the hospital gown look like a fashion statement, and the kind of trauma that made her eyes look like holes punched in a photograph. She sat propped against the pillows, staring at the wall, not responding when Alina entered the room. "Sarah, I'm Dr. Walters. I need to ask you about Cody, about what happened in the water." "Nothing." The girl's chest rose and fell, mechanical, automatic. Her hands lay still on the blanket, but Alina could see the scars, fresh, red, self-inflicted. She tried to claw something off her legs. "Sarah, I know you don't want to remember, but I need to understand what took Cody. I need to know if you saw it." "Saw it?" The voice was a whisper, barely audible. "I didn't see it, I felt it." "Felt what?" "The cold." Sarah turned her head slowly, mechanically, like a puppet on strings. "We were swimming, Cody and me, out past the buoys where the deep water starts. We were laughing, you know, just laughing and splashing. And then the water got cold, not everywhere, just patches, like something was moving under us, something huge pushing the cold water up." She shuddered, a full-body convulsion that rattled the bed frame. "Cody went under, just dropped, like someone pulled him. I thought he was joking, playing around. I dove down to find him and I saw," her voice broke. "I saw his legs, something had them, something with things on it. Suckers, but big, bigger than my hand. And they were pulling him down, down, down." "Did you see the body, the main body of the creature?" "No, just the arms, the tentacles. There were so many, Dr. Walters, not 8, more than 8. I counted 12 before I had to surface. 12 arms, and they were all wrapped around him, and he was looking at me, his eyes open, and he was trying to scream, but there was no air, and I could see the suckers on his chest, on his face, and they were pulsing, like hearts, like they were drinking him." Alina felt the familiar sensation of her scientific mind trying to reject the data. 12 arms. Octopuses had 8. The only cephalopods with more were nautiluses, ancient creatures with dozens of tentacles, but they were small, harmless, deep-water dwellers that never came near the surface. "What happened then?" I swam. I swam so hard I tore muscles in my shoulders. I didn't look back. I could feel it behind me, the cold patches following me, but I didn't stop. I made it to shore and I screamed until my throat bled, and when they finally came with flashlights, Cody was gone, just gone." She grabbed Alina's hand, her grip surprisingly strong, her nails digging into the skin. "It's still down there. It's always been down there. My grandmother warned me. She said the lake was dug over an old place, a hungry place. She said the Caddo trapped something there, something that came from the stars or the deep earth, something that wore the skin of animals to hunt. I thought she was crazy, old superstition. But she's not crazy. She's never been crazy." "Sarah, did your grandmother ever say what this thing was, where it came from?" "She said it was old, older than the hills, older than the rivers. She said it slept for centuries, waiting for the water to come back. And when they built the dam, when they flooded the valley, they woke it up. They gave it a hunting ground." Sarah released Alina's hand and turned back to the wall, her voice dropping to a monotone. "It's learning, Dr. Walters. Cody was an accident, a swimmer in the wrong place, but the others, the fisherman was alone. The girl from the boat was drunk. The diver was investigating, it's choosing now. Picking the easy ones, the isolated ones, it's getting smarter." "How do you know that?" "Because I can feel it." Sarah touched her temple, her fingers trembling. "When I sleep, I feel it thinking. It's not like human thoughts, it's geometric patterns, spirals, it's planning something, something big." Alina stood up, her mind racing. This was beyond her expertise now, beyond marine biology into something that bordered on the supernatural. But she couldn't deny the evidence, the bruises, the skin, the witness testimony. Something was in Lake Tenkler, something intelligent, something hungry. "Thank you, Sarah. You've been very helpful." "Dr. Walters," the girl's voice stopped her at the door. "One more thing, the thing that took Cody. It wasn't just hunting, it was curious. It touched my ankle as I swam away. Just a brush, one sucker, but I felt it, tasting me, deciding." "Deciding what?" "Whether I was worth keeping, whether I was interesting enough." Sarah smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Alina had ever seen. "It let me go because I wasn't interesting enough. But you, doctor, you're very interesting. I can feel it watching you already." Alina walked out of the room, her heart hammering against her ribs, telling herself it was just trauma, just dissociation, just the ramblings of a girl who had watched her boyfriend die. But when she reached her car, she found a wet footprint on the driver's side door. A single print, too large to be human, shaped like a star with too many points, already drying in the morning sun. She didn't touch it. She got in her car and drove back to the lake, to the waiting sheriff, to the nightmare that was only beginning. The archival records were kept in the basement of the Cherokee County Courthouse, a concrete room that smelled of mildew and old paper, and the particular silence of forgotten things. Alina sat at a folding table, surrounded by boxes of documents that spanned 70 years of Lake Tenkler's history, while a clerk named Doris brought her coffee and worried glances. "You sure you want to be down here alone?" Doris asked for the third time. "I could stay, keep you company." "I'm fine, thank you. It's just, people don't usually ask for the old records, not the real old ones, the ones from before the dam." Alina looked up from the blueprint she was examining, a 1951 Army Corps of Engineers schematic showing the proposed lakebed. "Why not?" Doris hesitated, her hand fluttering to the cross she wore around her neck. "Because things happened during construction, things that got buried along with the towns. People don't like to remember." "What kind of things?" "Ask the Caddo, they remember. They never wanted the dam built, said it would wake the sleeping water. But that was just superstition, right? Just old Indian stories." She left quickly, her footsteps echoing up the concrete stairs, leaving Alina alone with the documents and the growing certainty that she was looking for something that had been deliberately hidden. The construction blueprints were her first clue. On the surface, they showed a standard reservoir project: dam the river, flood the valley, create a recreational lake. But the details were wrong. The depth measurements showed trenches carved into the lakebed that served no engineering purpose. Trenches that were too deep, too regular, almost ritualistic in their precision. And the sediment control systems, massive pumps and drainage networks designed to keep the lake clear, were positioned not at the inflow points, where sediment would naturally accumulate, but at the trenches themselves. As if something needed to be kept buried. Alina pulled out the next box, labeled 1952-1954, initial filling and stocking. The documents inside were mundane at first: fish stocking reports, water quality tests, tourist promotion materials. But then she found the memorandum. It was addressed to the district engineer, marked confidential, dated October 14, 1952, 3 months after the dam gates were closed and the lake began to fill. Regarding the specimen recovered from Trench 7 during final grading operations. The biological sample has been examined by consulting experts from the University of Oklahoma. Preliminary classification suggests an unknown species of cephalopod, approximately 3.5 meters in length, exhibiting characteristics of both octopoda and vampiromorpha. Of particular note is the presence of vestigial shell structures and dentition consistent with lamprey morphology. Recommendation: the specimen appears to be in a state of cryptobiosis, suspended animation, and shows no signs of decomposition despite estimated age of 10,000 plus years based on sediment analysis. Immediate relocation to deep water is advised. The specimen has been placed in Trench 12 at coordinates redacted and covered with sediment per instructions. Additional specimens recovered from surrounding area have been similarly interred. Total count, 7. Note: native consultants have identified the location as a traditional containment site and have requested that no further development occur in the vicinity. Their concerns have been noted and dismissed. Alina read the memo 3 times, her hands shaking. 7 specimens, 10,000 years old. Cryptobiosis, a state of suspended animation that some tardigrades and other extremophiles could enter, surviving for millennia without food or water, waiting for conditions to improve. The engineers hadn't just built a lake over an ancient site. They had found something sleeping and buried it again, deliberately, knowingly. And now, 70 years later, something had woken up. She was reaching for the next box when the lights flickered, once, twice, then died completely, plunging her into absolute darkness. Alina froze, her breath loud in the sudden silence. The basement had no windows, no emergency lighting, just the darkness and the smell of old paper and something else, something wet, organic, like the inside of a shell or the breath of something that had been underwater for a very long time. "Hello," she called, her voice too loud, too sharp. "Doris, is that you?" No answer, but she could hear something now. A sound like wet rope being dragged across concrete, like suckers attaching and releasing, moving closer. Alina grabbed her phone, thumbed the flashlight app, swept the beam around the room. Empty. Just boxes and shadows and her own terrified reflection in the glass of a framed photograph on the wall. A picture of the dam dedication ceremony, 1953, smiling officials cutting a ribbon while behind them, the lake stretched out calm and innocent. The sound came again, closer now, from the direction of the stairs. She swept the light toward it, saw nothing, but smelled it now. The sharp ammoniac tang of cephalopod ink, unmistakable, impossible. She ran, not toward the stairs, she couldn't go toward that sound, but toward the back of the basement, toward the emergency exit she had noticed earlier. Her shoulder hit a box, sent papers scattering, and in the beam of her phone she saw them, photographs, yellowed with age, showing the construction of the dam. And in one of them, circled in red pencil, a shape in the water. A pale mass, too large to be a fish, with arms spread wide like a net. The emergency exit was locked. Of course it was locked. Alina rattled the handle, kicked the door, screamed into the darkness that was no longer empty, that was full of movement and wet sounds and the pressure of being watched by something that had no eyes but could see her anyway. Then the lights came back on. She spun back against the locked door, expecting what? A monster, a tentacle. But the basement was empty, just boxes and dust and the scattered papers where she had knocked them over. Except for the wet trail leading from the stairs to the table where she had been sitting. A trail of water and something else, something iridescent, already drying to a crust. And on the table, on top of the blueprint she had been examining, a single sucker print. Large, perfect, and arranged in a spiral pattern that matched exactly the bruises on the victims' bodies. It had been here, in the courthouse, miles from the lake. It could move on land. Alina grabbed her things and ran up the stairs, not stopping until she was outside in the sunlight, gasping, her phone already dialing Sheriff Blackwood's number. "It can travel," she said when he answered, not waiting for greeting. "It's not confined to the water. I need every man you have. I need boats. I need sonar. And I need to talk to the Caddo elders. Now." Dr. Walters slowed down. "What do you mean it can travel?" "I mean it's been out of the water. It's been in the courthouse basement. It's been watching me. And Sheriff, I think it's been watching all of us." The silence on the other end was heavy, frightened. Then, Meet me at the tribal offices in 30 minutes. And Dr. Walters, bring a change of clothes, something you don't mind getting wet. Why? Because we're going to have to go down there, into the trenches, to see what we're really dealing with. Alina looked at the lake, shimmering in the afternoon heat, deceptively beautiful, deceptively calm. No, she said, we're not going down there, not yet. First, we need to understand what we woke up, and how to put it back to sleep. But even as she said it, she knew it was too late for that. The thing in the lake was awake now. It was hungry, and it had been waiting 10,000 years to hunt again. The sun was high overhead, the lake was calm, and somewhere in the dark water, something was learning. Something was planning. And something was very, very patient. The Caddo Nation tribal offices were housed in a low brick building on the outskirts of Tahlequah, surrounded by oak trees that had been saplings when the Trail of Tears passed through. Alina sat in a waiting room decorated with pottery and woven baskets, her hands clasped in her lap, trying not to think about the sucker print she had left in the courthouse basement, trying not to wonder if it was still there, if it was multiplying, if it was calling to others. Sheriff Blackwood sat beside her, his hat in his hands, his face set in the expression of a man who had seen too much and understood too little. He hadn't spoken since they arrived, just nodded to the receptionist and taken his seat, waiting. They waited for 40 minutes. Then an old woman appeared in the doorway, not walked, not entered, but appeared, as if she had been there all along and they had only just noticed. Dr. Walters, she said, Sheriff, come. Her name was Josephine Harjo, and she was 93 years old according to the plaque on her office wall. Caddo elder, language keeper, traditional medicine woman. She looked at Alina with eyes that were cloudy with cataracts, but seemed to see more than they should, eyes that held the weight of centuries. You found the papers, Josephine said. It wasn't a question. The ones in the basement, the ones that tell what the white men buried. Yes. And you want to know how to kill it. I want to know what it is, what we're dealing with. Josephine smiled, and it was a terrible smile, full of sorrow and resignation. You cannot kill what was never alive, not in the way you understand life. She reached into her desk and pulled out a leather bundle, unwrapping it to reveal a book, not paper, but something older, something made of pressed bark and animal skin, covered in symbols that Alina didn't recognize. This is the oldest story, Josephine said. From before the Caddo, before the Cherokee, before any of the nations that walk this land now. From the time when the world was new and the old things still ruled. She opened the book to a page showing a drawing, crude, ancient, but unmistakable. A creature with many arms rising from water, its body covered in patches of different textures, some scaled, some furred, some that looked disturbingly like human skin. The first people called it the Skin Walker, Josephine said. Not the Navajo skin walkers you may have heard of. Those are different human witches who wear animal forms. This is the original, the thing that taught them how. I don't understand. It came from the sky or from the deep earth, the stories differ. It fell into water, great water, and there it slept for ages beyond counting. When the waters receded, it was trapped, buried in mud and stone. The first people found it, recognized it for what it was, and built their sacred sites over it, not to worship it, to contain it. She turned the page. Another drawing, this one showing figures in ceremonial dress standing around a pit, lowering something into the darkness. The Skin Walker is a collector, Josephine continued. It takes the forms of what it consumes. It learns from them. In the ocean, it wore the skins of fish and whales. When it came to land, it learned to wear the skins of animals. And when it found humans. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. The engineers in 1952, Alina said, they dug it up. They thought it was a fossil. They woke it. Josephine's voice was hard now, angry. They gave it water again. They gave it time. And now it has learned enough to hunt again, to grow, to become. Become what? Whatever it wants. Josephine closed the book, wrapped it again. It has been studying your people, Dr. Walters, watching from the water, learning your patterns, your weaknesses. It knows you now. It knows how you move, how you think, how you fear. How do we stop it? You don't. Josephine stood, walked to the window, looked out at the distant hills. The best you can do is contain it again, trap it, put it back to sleep. How? The same way the first people did, with fire, with sacrifice, with the willingness to become the bait. She turned back to face them, and Alina saw tears in the old woman's eyes. My great-great-grandmother helped bury it the first time, Josephine said. She was one of 12 who went into the pit. Only 3 came out, the others. They became part of it, part of its memory, part of its skin. You're saying we need to sacrifice people. I'm saying you need to give it something to consume, something that will fill it, make it sluggish, give you time to seal the trench. Josephine walked to her desk, pulled out a map, hand-drawn, ancient, showing the lake before it was a lake. The creature has a lair, a place where it rests, where it digests what it has learned. Here. She pointed to a spot on the map, a deep indentation in the old riverbed. Trench 12, the deepest point. That's where they put the largest specimen. That's where it has been growing, feeding, waiting. How do you know all this? Because I can hear it. Josephine touched her temple, the same gesture Sarah Whitebird had made. When it dreams, I dream. When it hungers, I feel it. And right now, Doctor, it is very, very hungry. The room was silent. Outside, a bird called, sharp and sudden, then nothing. There's something else, Josephine said. Something the papers didn't tell you. The engineers didn't just find one specimen. They found 7. And they didn't all go in the same trench. Alina felt ice in her stomach. How many trenches? 7 specimens in 7 trenches. And they've had 70 years to wake up, to communicate, to become one mind in 7 bodies. Sheriff Blackwood stood up, his face pale. You're saying there's not one monster in my lake. There's 7. I'm saying there's one mind with 7 bodies. And when they finish learning from you, when they understand you completely, they will become one body as well. A body large enough to leave the lake, large enough to hunt on land, large enough to... She stopped, shook her head. Large enough to do what? Alina demanded. To reproduce. Josephine's voice was barely a whisper. To split. To become 7 minds in 7 bodies again, each one going to a new water, a new hunting ground. To spread. The silence stretched, heavy and complete. How long, Alina asked, how long do we have? Before it finishes learning, before it becomes ready to reproduce. Josephine looked at the lake, though it was miles away, invisible from this window. Days, maybe hours, it's accelerating. The deaths, the attacks, it's testing you, studying you, consuming the ones who can teach it the most. The diver, Alina realized. Marcus Chen. It took him because he was a professional. It wanted to learn how divers think, how they move, how they escape. Yes, and now it knows. Now it can hunt divers. It can hunt anyone who enters its water. Alina stood up, her mind racing. We need to evacuate the lake, close it off. Already done, Blackwood said. I ordered it this morning. No boats, no swimming, no fishing, but it's not enough. People live on that lake. Houses, docks, marinas. And the thing can move on land, you said. For how long, how far? Josephine shrugged. As long as it stays wet, as far as it needs to. The first people claimed it could travel for miles if the conditions were right. Fog, rain, high humidity. Alina thought of Oklahoma in summer. The humidity that turned the air to soup. The sudden thunderstorms that could drop inches of rain in hours. The fog that rose from the lake at dawn and dusk. We need to act tonight, she said, before it learns more, before it spreads. And do what? Blackwood asked. You heard her, we can't kill it, we can only contain it. Then we contain it. Alina turned to Josephine. You said fire, you said bait. Tell me exactly what we need to do. The old woman studied her for a long moment, those cloudy eyes seeing too much. "You really want to know?" she asked. "Because once you start this, there's no stopping, and the bait doesn't survive." "Tell me." Josephine nodded as if Alina had passed some test. "Very well, but first you need to understand what you're dealing with, not just the stories, the reality." She walked to a cabinet, unlocked it with a key she wore around her neck, and pulled out a jar. It was glass, sealed with wax, and inside was something that made Alina's scientific mind rebel against what her eyes were seeing. A piece of flesh, pale and iridescent, covered in suckers, but the suckers were wrong. They had teeth. Tiny, needle-like teeth, hundreds of them, lining the inside of each cup. "My grandmother collected this," Josephine said. "In 1923, before the dam, when the river ran low and something washed up on the bank. She said it was a piece of the skin walker that had been shed, like a snake sheds its skin. It has been in my family ever since." Alina took the jar, held it to the light. The flesh inside seemed to move, to pulse, though she knew that was impossible. It was preserved dead, just tissue. But then she saw it, the pattern of the suckers, the way they were arranged. Not random, not the scattered distribution of a normal octopus. They formed shapes, letters almost, a language written in flesh. "It's communicating," she breathed. "Even now, even dead, it's trying to communicate." "Yes." Josephine took the jar back, returned it to the cabinet. "It is always communicating, always learning, always becoming. The question is whether you will listen." She turned back to face them, her ancient face set in lines of determination. "Tonight, at full dark, you must go to Trench 12. You must lure the creature to the surface with the one thing it cannot resist." "What?" "A mate," Josephine smiled, terrible and sad. "You must convince it that another of its kind has come, that it is time to reproduce." "How do we do that?" "Sound. The skinwalker communicates through vibration, through pressure, through patterns in the water. You must record the sounds it makes, then play them back. Amplified, modified to suggest a receptive partner." "We don't have recordings." "Yes, you do." Josephine pointed at Alina. "In your memory, in your dreams. You said you studied octopuses. You said one of them learned your heartbeat." Alina felt the blood drain from her face. "Archimedes, but that was in California, years ago." "Distance doesn't matter to them. Time doesn't matter. They are all connected, all the skinwalkers across space and memory. When you looked into that octopus's eyes, when it learned your heartbeat, you became part of its network. You became interesting." "That's insane." "Is it?" Josephine walked to her, took Alina's hand, pressed her fingers to Alina's wrist. "Your heart rate right now, 68 beats per minute. But when you think of the octopus, when you remember that moment in the aquarium." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Alina could feel it herself, the memory surfacing, the fear, the recognition. And with it, her heart rate changing, slowing, settling into a pattern she knew too well. 60 beats per minute, the rhythm Archimedes had taught her. "Oh God," she whispered, "it's been with me all this time." "Yes," Josephine released her hand. "And now you will use that connection. You will go to the lake tonight. You will play the sounds it taught you. And when it comes, when it rises to meet what it thinks is a mate, you will burn it. Burn it underwater. Electricity, the one thing that can hurt it. The first people used lightning, natural strikes. You will use generators, batteries, whatever you can bring. You must electrify the water, the entire trench, while the creature is at the surface. That will kill everything in the lake. Better than what happens if it spreads." Josephine's voice was hard. "Better than what happens when it learns to wear human skin completely, when it walks among you, when it breeds." Alina looked at Blackwood. The sheriff's face was gray, but he nodded. "We have generators at the marina, industrial units for power outages. We can wire them to the water." "You'll need more than generators," Josephine said. You'll need the power grid, the dam itself. Can you access that? I know the dam supervisor. He's a good man. If I tell him it's an emergency, tell him whatever you need to, but do it quickly. You have until midnight. After that, the creature will be too active, too aware. It will know you're coming. She walked them to the door, her hand on Elena's arm, her voice low. One more thing, the bait, the one who plays the recording, who stands at the water's edge. They must be willing. They must want the creature to come. Fear will drive it away. Doubt will make it suspicious. Only genuine invitation will work. You're talking about a suicide mission. I'm talking about sacrifice. Josephine's eyes were wet now. The same sacrifice my ancestors made. The same sacrifice that kept this thing buried for 10,000 years. Someone must stand at the edge and call it. And when it comes, they must not run. Elena thought of the victims. Of Cody Harjo, 19 years old, pulled under while his girlfriend watched. Of Marcus Chen, the diver, learning too late that the lake had teeth. Of the others, the ones she hadn't met, the ones whose names were just entries in a file. I'll do it, she said. Elena, Blackwood started. No, it has to be me. I'm the one it knows. I'm the one it's been watching. If anyone can convince it to come to the surface, it's me. She turned to Josephine. What do I need to do? The old woman smiled, and for the first time it was a genuine smile, full of warmth and sorrow. You need to remember the sound, the pattern Archimedes taught you. You need to make that sound real in the water where the skinwalker can hear it. How? Your heartbeat. Josephine touched Elena's chest above her heart. You must enter the water. You must let your heart speak. And you must hope that the creature is lonely enough, curious enough, hungry enough to answer. Elena felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. The water, the darkness, the thing below. When do we start? Josephine looked at the sky, at the sun beginning its descent toward the hills. Now, you have 6 hours to prepare. 6 hours before the darkness comes and the skinwalker begins to hunt again. The marina was a chaos of activity. Deputies and volunteers running cables, positioning generators, clearing boats from the water. Elena stood at the end of the longest dock, looking out at Trench 12, marked by a buoy that bobbed gently in the evening light. It looked so peaceful, so ordinary, just a lake like any other, full of fish and memories and summer afternoons. But beneath that surface, something waited, something that had been waiting for 10,000 years, something that had learned to be patient. Dr. Walters, Blackwood approached, his boots heavy on the wooden planks. We're ready. The dam supervisor is standing by. We can electrify the entire cove on your signal. And the recording equipment. Set up on the boat. He pointed to a small research vessel anchored 50 yards out, positioned directly over the trench. Hydrophones in the water, speakers ready, but are you sure about this? There has to be another way. There isn't. Elena didn't look at him. She couldn't. It knows me. It's been watching me since California, maybe longer. I'm the only one who can call it. And if it doesn't come, then we try something else, but it will come. She finally turned to face him. It's curious. That's the thing about them, octopuses, I mean. They're smart, but more than that, they're curious. They want to know things. They want to understand. The skinwalker has been alone for 10,000 years. It will come. And when it does, you hit the switch, you electrify the water, you pray it's enough. Blackwood nodded, his face grim. I should be the one out there, not you. You don't know the sound. You don't have the connection. Elena smiled, and it felt strange on her face, like a muscle she hadn't used in years. Besides, Sheriff, someone has to stay behind to tell the story. If this doesn't work, someone needs to know what we tried. She walked to the boat, climbed aboard, started the engine. The research vessel was small, just big enough for the equipment and one person, perfect for what she needed to do. As she pulled away from the dock, she heard Blackwood's voice, carried on the evening wind. Good luck, Dr. Walters, and thank you. She didn't answer. She was already focusing on the water, on the memory, on the sound. 60 beats per minute, the rhythm of her heart, the language of the deep. She anchored the boat directly over Trench 12, checked the hydrophones one last time, and began to prepare. The sun was setting, the stars were coming out, and somewhere below in the darkness of the trench, something was listening. Something was waiting. Something was very, very hungry. The water was warm against Alina's skin, warmer than it should have been in late summer, almost body temperature, as if the lake itself were alive and breathing. She floated at the surface, tethered to the boat by a safety line that she didn't trust, wearing only a swimsuit and a waterproof microphone pressed against her chest. Above, the sky was a deepening purple, stars emerging one by one. Below, there was only darkness. The trench began 20 feet down, a sudden drop-off where the lakebed fell away into blackness. At its deepest point, Josephine had said, it was over 200 feet, deeper than the lake should be, deeper than any natural formation, a scar in the earth where something had been buried and had waited. Alina closed her eyes and began to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, slow, steady, deliberate. She was trying to lower her heart rate to find the rhythm that Archimedes had taught her, the 60 beats per minute that had become a language, a signal, a call across species and time and whatever strange connection existed between human and cephalopod. 65, 62, 60. She felt it settle into her chest, the steady thump, thump, thump that had become her signature, her identifier, her invitation. The microphone picked it up, amplified it, sent it down through the hydrophones into the depths below. Thump, 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 thump. She imagined the sound traveling through the water, through the thermoclines, down into the trench where something waited in the dark. She imagined it hearing her, recognizing her, remembering the connection that had been forged years ago in a California aquarium. Would it come? Could it understand? The skinwalker was ancient, alien, a thing that predated human existence, but it was also intelligent, adaptable, hungry for connection, for knowledge, for the skins of new species to wear. And it had been alone for so very long. 10 minutes passed, 20. The sky was fully dark now, the stars bright and cold. Alina floated, barely moving, her heartbeat the only sound in the world. Then she felt it. A change in the water, a pressure, a displacement, as if something massive had shifted far below. The temperature dropped suddenly, pockets of cold rising from the depths, carrying with them the smell of ancient mud and something else, something organic, ammoniac, the signature of cephalopod ink. It's coming, she thought. Oh God, it's coming. She kept her eyes closed. She kept her breathing steady. She kept her heart beating its slow, deliberate rhythm. Thump, 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 thump. The water moved around her. Not waves, something else. Currents that had no business existing in a still lake, spiraling patterns that caressed her legs, her arms, her back. She felt the first touch of a sucker, gentle, curious, tasting her skin. It was cold, so cold, and the texture was wrong, not the smooth cup of a normal octopus, but ridged, textured, lined with something that felt like teeth. She didn't open her eyes. She didn't move. She just kept breathing, kept her heart steady, kept sending the signal. More suckers, more touches. They were exploring her, mapping her, learning her shape and temperature and texture. She could feel the intelligence behind them, the deliberate, methodical curiosity. It wasn't attacking, it was studying. Then she felt the arms. They wrapped around her legs first, thick and muscular, covered in rows of suckers that pulsed against her skin. Then her waist, her chest, her arms. She was being embraced, held, lifted slightly in the water. Still, she didn't open her eyes. She didn't want to see. She knew that if she looked, if she saw what held her, she would scream, would fight, would ruin everything. The arms tightened, not crushing, holding, supporting. And then she felt it, the main body pressing against her back, massive and soft and wrong. It was huge, larger than any octopus should be, larger than any creature in a freshwater lake. She could feel the shape of it, the bulk, the weight. And she could feel something else. Patches of different textures, smooth here, rough there, places where the skin felt almost human. It was wearing skins, multiple skins, layers of them grafted onto its body, a patchwork of everything it had consumed. A voice spoke in her mind. Not words, impressions, images, feelings, curiosity, recognition, hunger. It knew her. It remembered her. The connection she had forged with Archimedes had been a beacon, a signal flare sent into the darkness, and now the darkness had answered. The arms tightened further and she felt herself being pulled down. Not fast, not violent, but inexorable. The surface receded above her, the stars dimming through the water. She was descending, being drawn into the trench, into the darkness where the skinwalker lived. She should have been terrified. She should have been fighting, screaming, struggling against the embrace. But something in the creature's touch was hypnotic, almost tender. It wasn't hurting her. It was welcoming her, inviting her to see, to understand, to become. Her eyes opened. She regretted it immediately. The creature filled her vision, a wall of pale flesh that glowed faintly in the darkness, bioluminescent patches pulsing in patterns that hurt to look at. She could see the arms now, 12 of them, not 8, each one as thick as her thigh, covered in spiraling rows of suckers that opened and closed like mouths. And the face, the center of the creature where an octopus should have had a beak, a simple mouth. It had a face. Not human, not entirely, but assembled from human features. Eyes, too many eyes arranged in a circle, each one from a different victim, each one still moving, still seeing. A nose, or the suggestion of one, formed from cartilage and skin. And a mouth, a terrible mouth, lined not with a beak but with teeth. Human teeth, hundreds of them, arranged in spiraling rows like the suckers on its arms. It smiled at her. She was sure of it. The mouth curved upward, the teeth parted, and something emerged, a tongue, or what passed for one, long and pale and covered in taste buds that looked like tiny eyes. The voice in her mind grew stronger, more insistent. Join, it said, not words but the concept, the desire. Learn, become, wear me, I wear you together. She understood then what the skinwalker wanted, not just to consume her, to wear her skin. It wanted to merge, to combine, to create something new from their joined flesh. And part of her, a part she hadn't known existed, a part that had been touched by Archimedes all those years ago, wanted it too. The descent continued. They were deep now, past the thermocline, into water that should have been crushingly cold but wasn't. The creature's body radiated heat, or something like heat, a biological furnace that kept its lair warm. She could see the trench walls now, illuminated by the creature's bioluminescence. They were smooth, polished, carved by design rather than nature. And they were covered in patterns, spirals like the bruises on the victims, but larger, more complex, covering every surface. Writing, the history of the skinwalker, recorded in its own language, its own flesh. The descent stopped. They had reached the bottom, or a ledge, a shelf that jutted out from the trench wall. The creature released her gently, setting her down on the smooth stone. She stood, shivering, her body screaming for air, for light, for escape. But she didn't run. She couldn't. The creature was all around her now, its arms forming a cage, a chamber, a womb. And in the center of that chamber, suspended in the water, was something that made her mind reel. Bodies. Dozens of them, hundreds, preserved in some kind of mucus or resin, hanging like fruit from tendrils that grew from the creature's flesh. She recognized some: Cody Harjo, his face frozen in a scream. Marcus Chen, his diving suit still on, his eyes open and aware. Others she didn't know, older bodies, some wearing clothes from decades past, some wearing nothing but the passage of time. They weren't dead, she could see that now. Their chests moved slowly, imperceptibly. Their eyes tracked her, followed her, pleaded with her. They were being kept, stored, worn like jewelry, like trophies, like spare skins waiting to be used. The creature moved among them, caressing them with its arms, and she understood. This was its collection, its wardrobe, its memory palace. Each body was a lesson learned, a species mastered, a form it could assume when needed. And now it wanted to add her to the collection. The voice came again, stronger now, almost words. You called, it said. You invited. You are willing. No, she tried to say, but the water filled her mouth, her lungs. She was drowning, she realized. She had been drowning since the creature grabbed her, and only its embrace, its strange biology, had kept her alive this long. Yes, the creature insisted. Your heart, your sound, you want to know, you want to become. All humans want, all humans reach. I reach back. An arm extended toward her, the tip opening like a flower, revealing not a sucker but something else. A mouth, a small mouth lined with teeth, ready to attach, to drink, to merge. Alina did the only thing she could do. She reached into her swimsuit, into the pocket she had sewn there, and pulled out the emergency beacon. It was waterproof, shockproof, designed for exactly this situation. She pressed the button. Above, on the boat, the signal was received. And at the marina, Sheriff Blackwood saw the light on his console turn green. Now, he screamed, hit it now. The generators roared to life. The cables running into the water began to spark, and Lake Tenkler, or at least this cove, this trench, became a conductor for 50,000 volts of electricity. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The creature convulsed, every arm snapping rigid, every sucker opening in a scream that was felt rather than heard. The water around Alina boiled, turned to steam, and she was thrown upward, released, tumbling through the chaos of electrified water and thrashing tentacles. She broke the surface, gasping, choking, her body burning where the current had passed through. The boat was right there, the ladder hanging down, and she grabbed it, pulled herself up, collapsed on the deck. Below, the creature was dying, or not dying, hurting. She could feel its pain, its confusion, its betrayal. It had trusted her. It had answered her call, and she had heard it. The arms thrashed at the surface, slapping the water, creating waves that rocked the boat violently. She saw them in the starlight, pale, massive, covered in burns where the electricity had touched. And she saw the face again, rising briefly above the water, the circle of eyes all fixed on her, all full of something that might have been sorrow. Then it sank. The arms retreated, the body descended, and the water was still again. Alina lay on the deck, shaking, crying, her body a map of sucker burns and electrical shocks. She had done it. She had survived. The creature was hurt, maybe dying, certainly driven back to the depths. But as she lay there, listening to the silence of the lake, she heard something else. A sound carried through the water, through the hull of the boat, through her bones. A heartbeat. Not hers, slower, deeper, and not alone. Multiple heartbeats, 6 of them, 6 other rhythms answering the first, calling to each other across the lake. The other trenches, the other specimens, they were waking up. And they were angry. The boat ride back to the marina was the longest 10 minutes of Alina's life. She huddled on the deck, wrapped in a blanket that one of the deputies had thrown over her, watching the water with eyes that wouldn't close. It was out there. They were out there. 7 creatures, 7 minds, 7 hungers, and she had just declared war on all of them. Blackwood met her at the dock, his face a mask of relief and horror. My God, Alina, what happened? We saw the thrashing, the electricity. We thought you were dead. Not dead. Her voice was a croak, her throat burned from the water. But I made it worse. I woke the others. What? There are 7 of them, 7 trenches. I hurt one and the others. They know. They're communicating. They're planning. Blackwood helped her to her feet, supported her as they walked toward the emergency vehicles. We need to evacuate. The whole lake. Everyone within miles. It won't be enough. Alina stopped, turned to face the water. They're not confined to the lake anymore. They can travel, they can hunt on land, and now they know we're a threat. Then what do we do? She thought of Josephine, of the old stories, of the first people who had buried these things 10,000 years ago. We need to contain them, all of them, at once, before they can coordinate, before they can merge, before they can spread. How? I don't know yet, but I know who might. She looked toward the hills, toward the tribal offices miles away. I need to talk to Josephine again. I need to know everything, the full ritual, the real price. They drove through the night, Alina shivering in the back of Blackwood's cruiser, her mind racing with images of the trench, the bodies, the face with its circle of eyes. She had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had looked back, and now she was changed, marked, claimed. The tribal offices were dark when they arrived, but Josephine was waiting, sitting on the porch in a rocking chair, as if she had known they would come. You survived, the old woman said, not a question. I heard it, but I woke the others. Yes, Josephine nodded slowly. I felt them rise, the seven becoming one mind again. They have been separate too long. They want to be whole. How do we stop them? Josephine stood, walked to the edge of the porch, looked out at the night. You don't stop them. You only delay them. The first people knew this. They buried the skinwalker not to destroy it, but to wait, to hope that someday something would evolve that could truly kill it. And has something evolved? Perhaps. Josephine turned to face her, and Alina saw tears on the old woman's cheeks. You have a choice, Dr. Walters. You can run. Leave this place, let the skinwalker claim what it will, hope that it eventually goes back to sleep. Or you can stay, fight, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to end this forever. How? The skinwalker learns by wearing, by consuming, by becoming. What if you could give it something that would poison it from the inside, something that would corrupt its memory, its identity, its very nature? Like what? Josephine smiled, and it was full of sorrow. Yourself, your knowledge, your science, your understanding of what it truly is. If you let it consume you, let it wear you, but keep your mind active, keep fighting. You might be able to introduce a kind of cognitive poison, a doubt, a question that it cannot answer. You're talking about suicide. I'm talking about sacrifice. The same sacrifice my ancestors made, but with a difference. They gave their bodies. You would give your mind, your identity, yourself. Alina thought of the creature's voice in her mind, the seductive pull of its invitation. Join, become, wear me. And if it works, if I poison it, then it dies or sleeps, or forgets what it is, becomes something else, something harmless. Josephine reached out, took Alina's hand. But you would be gone, consumed, worn like a skin, then discarded. And if it doesn't work, then it learns everything you know. It becomes smarter, more dangerous, more unstoppable. And you become part of its collection, conscious but trapped forever. Alina looked at the lake, invisible in the darkness but present, always present, full of watching things. I need to think about it. You have until dawn. Josephine released her hand. After that, they will begin to hunt in earnest. They will come for you first, Dr. Walters. You hurt them. You betrayed their trust. They will want to understand why. Alina nodded, walked to the car, sat in the back seat while Blackwood drove her to the motel where they had arranged a room. But she didn't sleep. She couldn't. She sat by the window, watching the lake, listening to the heartbeat that wasn't hers, feeling the presence of 7 ancient minds turning their attention toward her. At 4 a.m., she made her decision. She would fight, not with electricity, not with weapons, but with the only thing she had left. Herself. Dawn came red and angry over Lake Tenkler, the sun rising through a haze that wasn't entirely natural. Alina stood on the shore, watching the water, feeling the 7 heartbeats that pulsed beneath the surface like the rhythm of a vast, diseased organ. They were waiting. She could feel it. The creatures had spent the night communicating, coordinating, becoming one mind in 7 bodies, and that mind was focused on her. She had spent the night in preparation. Not physical preparation. There was nothing she could do to protect her body, but mental preparation. She had reviewed everything she knew about octopus cognition, about distributed intelligence, about the way these creatures processed information, learned, grew. The skinwalker learned by wearing, by consuming, by making the victim's knowledge, memories, identity part of itself. But what if the victim's identity was toxic? What if the very act of consumption introduced a kind of cognitive dissonance, a contradiction that the creature couldn't resolve? She had a theory. It was thin, based on speculation and desperation, but it was all she had. Octopuses were intelligent, yes, but their intelligence was different from human intelligence. They didn't have centralized brains. Their neurons were distributed throughout their bodies, especially in their arms. Each arm could think independently, solve problems, make decisions. The central brain was more of a coordinator, a consensus builder. What if she could exploit that? What if she could introduce ideas, memories, patterns of thought that would create conflict between the distributed parts of the skinwalker's consciousness? A kind of autoimmune response, but cognitive rather than physical. She would have to let it consume her, let it wear her, but she would have to remain conscious, remain herself, remain fighting for as long as possible. She would have to fill its mind with contradictions, with paradoxes, with the impossibility of what it was trying to become. And at the end, when she could fight no longer, she would leave one final gift, a question that had no answer, a loop that would trap the creature's processing power, sending it into infinite recursion, paralyzing it. It was a long shot. It was probably suicide, but it was better than letting the creatures spread, letting them reproduce, letting them cover the world in their patchwork skins. Blackwood found her at the water's edge, his face haggard, his eyes red-rimmed. "The evacuation is underway," he said. "We've cleared everyone within 5 miles of the lake, but we can't clear the whole state, Alina, if these things spread." "They won't." She didn't look at him. "I'm going to stop them." "How?" She told him. The plan, the theory, the sacrifice. He listened in silence, his face growing paler with each word. "No," he said when she finished. "There has to be another way. Bombs, chemicals. We could drain the lake, expose them to air. They're too big, too distributed, too smart. They would burrow, hide, wait. And even if we killed the bodies, the mind would remain, the memory, the potential." She finally turned to face him. "This is the only way to truly end it, to poison the source." "And you, what happens to you?" "I become part of it, part of the poison." She smiled, and it was genuine, peaceful. "But I also become part of the solution. My knowledge, my understanding, my very identity, they become weapons. They become the thing that destroys it from within." "That's not science, that's martyrdom." "Maybe, but it's also the only thing that makes sense." She touched his arm briefly. "Sheriff, I've spent my whole life studying these creatures. I've loved them, respected them, been terrified by them. And now I have a chance to use that knowledge to save people, to save the world. How could I not take it?" He didn't answer. He just pulled her into a hug, brief and fierce, then stepped back. "What do you need?" "A boat out to the center of the lake. And then, distance. You need to be far away when it happens." "Elena." "Please," she met his eyes. "This is hard enough, don't make me argue." He nodded, turned away, walked toward the dock where a small motorboat waited. They didn't speak on the ride out. The lake was eerily calm, the surface like glass reflecting the red sky. Elena sat in the bow, watching the water, feeling the presence below growing stronger, more focused, more hungry. They reached the center, the deepest point, directly above the network of trenches where the 7 creatures waited. "This is far enough," she said. Blackwood cut the engine. The silence was absolute, broken only by the lapping of water against the hull. How long? He asked. I don't know, hours maybe, days, however long it takes. She stood, began to remove her clothes. She would enter the water naked, vulnerable, offering herself completely. Don't come back for me. Whatever happens, don't come back. Elena, promise me. He hesitated, then nodded. I promise. She dove. The water closed over her head, warm and welcoming, and she swam down, 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 following the pull of the 7 heartbeats, the 7 minds that called to her. She didn't have to swim long, they were waiting. The first touch came at 30 feet, a gentle caress, a sucker tasting her ankle. Then another and another until she was surrounded by a forest of arms, a cathedral of tentacles, all reaching for her, all wanting her. She didn't fight. She opened herself mentally and physically, inviting them in. Yes, she thought, projecting the word, the concept, the willingness. Take me, wear me, learn me, I am yours. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The creatures, all 7 of them, rose from their trenches, converging on her, their bodies filling the water with pale luminescence, their arms intertwining, becoming one. She saw them clearly for the first time. 7 massive forms, each one different, each one wearing different skins, different collections. One was covered in fish scales, shimmering and rainbow. Another wore fur, patches of otter and beaver and something that might have been bear. A third was almost entirely human, its body a patchwork of faces and limbs and torsos, a walking museum of its victims. And in the center, the largest one, the one she had hurt. It wore her mark, her signature, burns where the electricity had touched, scars that would never heal. It was the leader, the first, the original. The others were copies, fragments, pieces that had broken off and grown into new bodies. They surrounded her, embraced her, lifted her in a nest of arms that was also a womb, a cocoon, a prison. The first one, the leader, pressed its face to hers. The circle of eyes, stolen from dozens of victims, all focused on her. The mouth opened, the spiral of teeth parted, and something emerged. A tendril, a probe, a connection. It touched her forehead, and the world exploded. She was everywhere. She was nowhere. She was the lake, the water, the mud, the trenches. She was 7 bodies and 1 mind, ancient and vast and hungry. She was the skinwalker. No, she was Elena, but she was also the skinwalker. The creature was consuming her, wearing her, making her part of itself. And in doing so, it was giving her access to its mind, its memories, its very being. She saw the beginning, the fall from the sky or the rise from the deep. The memory was unclear, translated through alien senses. She saw the first world, the world before humans, before mammals, before vertebrates. She saw the skinwalker's first hunger, its first consumption, its first wearing of another's skin. She saw the long ages, the endless patience. The creature didn't think in years or centuries, but in geological epochs. It had waited for the rise of fish, then amphibians, then reptiles, then mammals. Each new form was a new lesson, a new skin to wear, a new way of being. And then humans, clever, fearful, delicious humans. The skinwalker had learned to wear them, to hunt them, to become them. It had built civilizations, worn kings and priests and prophets. It had been gods, monsters, myths. And then the first people had trapped it, buried it, waited for it to die. But it hadn't died, it had slept, dreamed, planned. Until the engineers woke it. Elena felt the creature's joy at being awake, at being hungry again, at being able to hunt and wear and become. She felt its plans for the future, the reproduction, the spreading, the covering of the world in its patchwork flesh. And she felt its curiosity about her, its recognition. It knew her from before, from the connection with Archimedes, from the signal she had sent into the dark. It thought of her as special, as worthy, as a potential mate, a partner, a co-creator. Join, it said, and this time she understood the full meaning. Not just consumption, not just wearing, but true merging. 2 minds becoming one, 2 identities fused into something new. Yes, she answered. But first let me show you what I know. Let me teach you. Let me give you everything. She opened her memories, her childhood, her education, her research, the octopuses she had studied, the papers she had written, the theories she had developed. She gave it all freely, eagerly. And hidden within that knowledge, wrapped in the genuine desire to share, were the seeds of destruction. The concept of individual identity, the idea that a self could be separate, distinct, inviolable. The notion that consumption didn't have to mean absorption, that wearing a skin didn't have to mean becoming the skin. She introduced doubt. She introduced paradox. She introduced the impossibility of what the skinwalker was trying to do. How can you be everything and still be yourself? How can you wear 1,000 skins and have no face of your own? How can you consume minds and still have a mind that is yours? The creature hesitated. She felt its confusion, its first flicker of uncertainty. I am, it said. I wear, I become, this is. But who are you? Alina asked. When you wear me, when you wear all of us, who is wearing? What is the self beneath the skins? I am, it repeated, but weaker now. I am the wearing, the becoming, the hunger. But what are you when you're not hungry? Alina pressed. What are you when you're alone? What is your true form, your true face, your true name? Silence. The creature had no answer. It had never needed one. For 10,000 years it had defined itself by what it consumed, what it wore, what it became. It had no identity apart from its hunger. Let me show you, Alina said. And she gave it her sense of self, her memories of being Alina Walters, daughter of Margaret and James, sister to David, student of the sea. She gave it her loves, her fears, her hopes, her failures. She gave it the specific, limited, precious identity of a single human life. And she showed it what it meant to be content with that, to be enough, to not need to consume, to wear, to become. The creature recoiled. She felt its horror, its rejection of everything she offered. This was poison. This was death. This was the negation of everything it was. But she didn't stop. She kept feeding it, memory after memory, identity after identity, each one a tiny dagger in the distributed consciousness of the beast. And she felt something else happening. The other creatures, the 6 copies, were feeling it too. They were connected, one mind in 7 bodies, and her poison was spreading through that connection, infecting all of them. They began to fragment. She felt it, the breaking of the unity, the 7 minds becoming separate again, each one struggling with the questions she had introduced. Who am I? What am I? Why do I hunger? The questions had no answers. They couldn't have answers, not for creatures that had defined themselves only by consumption. The questions were traps, loops, infinite regressions that would consume processing power, paralyze thought, freeze action. The creature, the original, the leader, tried to fight back. It tried to reject her, to expel her, to spit her out like a poisoned meal. But she held on. She wrapped herself in its consciousness, became part of its fabric, refused to be removed. You wanted to wear me, she said. You wanted to learn from me. So learn. Learn what it means to be one thing, to be limited, to be human. The creature screamed. She felt it, a vibration through the water, through the flesh, through the shared mind. It was pain, yes, but also something else. Recognition, understanding. For the first time in 10,000 years, the skinwalker was experiencing something other than hunger. It was experiencing loss. Time lost meaning. Alina existed in a state that was neither life nor death, neither consciousness nor unconsciousness. She was part of the creature, part of the lake, part of the 7 bodies that thrashed and convulsed in the deep water. She could feel them dying. Not physically, their bodies were strong, resilient, nearly immortal, but mentally. The poison she had introduced was working, creating loops of thought that couldn't be resolved, conflicts that couldn't be reconciled. The 7 creatures were turning on each other. She felt it, the breaking of the unity, the descent into chaos. Each one blamed the others for the infection. Each one tried to consume the others, to absorb them, to restore the unity through force. They were tearing themselves apart. And in the center of it all, the original, the leader, the one that had warned her. It was the most affected, the most poisoned. It had taken the largest dose of her identity, and it was drowning in it. "Please," it said, and the word was human, all too human. "Stop. I understand. I will sleep. I will wait. Just stop." "Will you stop hunting?" Alina asked. "Will you stop wearing? Will you let the humans be?" "Yes, yes, I will bury myself. I will forget. I will be nothing." "And the others, the copies?" "They are confused, lost. Without me they will dissipate, become less." "Will they die?" "Not die, sleep, like before, waiting, but weaker, much weaker, your poison. It will pass to them through me. They will dream of being one thing, of being limited. It will torment them, paralyze them." Alina considered. It wasn't perfect. The creatures would still exist, still be capable of waking, still be dangerous. But they would be weakened, confused, trapped in their own minds. It was the best she could do. "Sleep," she commanded. "Bury yourself. And if you ever wake, remember this. Remember what it cost you. Remember that there are things that cannot be consumed, cannot be worn, cannot be become." "I remember," the creature said, and she felt its gratitude, its sorrow, its strange, alien respect. "You are worthy skin," it said. "The worthiest I have ever worn. I will remember you. I will dream of you. For 10,000 years I will dream of being Alina." And then it released her. She woke on the surface, floating, her body broken and burned but alive. The sun was high overhead, the sky blue and clear. The lake was calm. She was alone. She tried to swim, but her limbs wouldn't respond. She tried to call out, but her voice was gone. She could only float, staring at the sky, waiting for death or rescue. It was rescue that came. Blackwood, breaking his promise, returning with a boat, pulling her from the water, weeping as he held her. "I felt it," he said over and over. "I felt it end. Whatever you did, it worked. The lake. It's quiet now, empty." "Not empty," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Sleeping." "Will it wake?" "Someday, maybe, but weaker, confused." She closed her eyes. "It will dream of being human, of being limited, of being me." She slept then, truly slept, for the first time in years. And in her dreams she swam through dark water, not alone but surrounded by 7 shapes that followed her, watched her, learned from her. But they didn't touch her, they only watched. And when she woke, she was in a hospital bed, and the lake was calm, and the world was safe. For now. 2 weeks later, Alina stood at the edge of Lake Tenkeler, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and red. She was healed, mostly. The burns had scarred. The memories had faded to a dull ache. But she could still feel them, down there in the trenches, sleeping, dreaming of being her. She had reviewed the GoPro footage from Marcus Chen's dive. Right before it cut out, right before the creature took him, there was a moment, just a fraction of a second, where the camera had focused on the creature's eye. And the pupil had dilated, in recognition, in greeting. It had known her even then, even before she entered the water. It had been waiting for her specifically, personally. She didn't know if that was comforting or terrifying. "Dr. Walters," Blackwood approached, his boots crunching on the gravel. "You have a call, University of Oklahoma. They want to talk about your research." "Tell them I'm retired." "They said it's important, something about a new discovery, another lake, similar readings." Alina turned to face him. "Where?" "Lake Thunderbird, near Norman. They found something in the sediment, something that shouldn't be there." She looked at the water, at the peaceful surface that hid so much darkness. Then she looked at the horizon, toward the west, toward the other lake, the other sleeping thing. "Tell them I'll be there tomorrow." She walked back to her car, but she paused at the door, looking one last time at the lake. Beneath the still waters something moved, something dreamed, something waited. and somewhere in the dark, she knew it was smiling. The inflatable raft was pink, shaped like a unicorn, and it drifted empty 50 yards from shore. The beach was crowded with families, with children playing in the shallows, with lifeguards watching from their towers. No one noticed when the raft stopped drifting. No one saw the water beneath it darken, the shadow rising slowly, carefully, testing. A child ran into the water, laughing, chasing a beach ball. He was 10 feet from the raft when his mother called him back. "Tommy, come here, lunch is ready." The boy turned, ran back to his towel, never knowing how close he had come. The shadow paused, considered, then retreated slowly back into the depths. Not yet, not ready, still learning, still dreaming. But soon. The water rippled once, then was still. And somewhere deep in the trench, the skinwalker dreamed of pink unicorns and children and the taste of summer. It had been so very long since it had hunted in the shallows. It could wait a little longer. The Devil's Hop. The scream came at 2:47 a.m., cutting through the Ozark night like a blade through canvas. Ranger Dale Whitaker was awake when it happened. He was always awake at 2:47 a.m. these days, his knee throbbing in time with his pulse, his mind circling the same memories like a vulture over carrion. The knee was old injury, 20 years old, from a fall down a ravine during a search and rescue that had found no rescue and only barely found the body. But it ached like it was fresh, like the bone was remembering something the mind had tried to forget. He was sitting on his porch when the scream came, nursing a bourbon that wasn't doing anything for the pain, staring at the darkness where the forest began. The scream started high, a woman's voice, full of terror and surprise, then dropped into something lower, wetter, more animal. It lasted 4 seconds. Then silence. Dale didn't move, not at first. He had heard screams before in these woods, drunk hunters, lost hikers, teenagers on acid who thought the trees were reaching for them. The Ozarks were old mountains, worn soft by time but still full of shadows, still capable of swallowing the unwary. But this scream was different. It had a quality to it, a texture like the difference between a recording and a live performance. This was real. This was close. He set down the bourbon, picked up his radio and called it in. "Dispatch, this is Whitaker. Possible distress call in Sector 7 near the old Hemphill Trail. I'm investigating." "Copy, Dale, you want backup?" "Not yet, probably just a coyote got someone's cat. I'll check it out." He didn't believe that. He hadn't believed it even as he said it. The truck started on the third try, the engine coughing in the cold mountain air. Dale drove slowly, his headlights cutting through the darkness, illuminating nothing but trees and more trees. The Ozark National Forest was 1.2 million acres of oak and hickory and pine, of caves and ravines and abandoned mines that dated back to the 1800s. It was beautiful during the day, full of hikers and campers and nature enthusiasts. At night, it was something else, something older. He found the campsite at 3:15 a.m. A pickup truck, new model, expensive, parked at the trailhead. No lights, no movement, just the truck and the darkness and the smell. Dale smelled it before he saw anything. Wet fur, musk, something else underneath, something coppery and sweet. Blood. He got out of the truck slowly, his hand on his sidearm. He was 52 years old, had been a ranger for 30 years, and he had never once drawn his weapon in the line of duty. He hoped tonight wouldn't be the first time. "Hello," he called. "Forest Service, is anyone there?" No answer, just the wind in the trees, the distant hoot of an owl, the sound of his own heart. He approached the truck with his flashlight playing the beam across the windows. Empty. The driver's door was open, keys still in the ignition. A smartphone lay on the seat, screen cracked but still glowing with a missed call from someone named JSSICA. Dale circled the truck, following the smell. It led him to the tree line, to a spot where the undergrowth was disturbed, branches broken, leaves scattered. Something had come through here. Something big. He found the first body 10 feet into the woods. It was a dog, a hunting dog by the look of it, a bluedick coonhound, muscular and well-fed, or it had been well-fed. Now it was just meat. The dog had been torn apart. Not eaten, torn apart. Its ribcage was cracked open, the bones snapped with force that shouldn't have been possible for any predator native to Arkansas. The organs were gone, removed with surgical precision. The spine was broken in 3 places, bent backward at angles that made Dale's own injured knee ache in sympathy. And the head was the worst. The skull had been punctured, not bitten but punched through, 2 holes in the frontal bone that looked almost like finger holes in a bowling ball. The brain was gone, removed, consumed. Dale had seen bear attacks before. He had seen coyote kills, wolf kills, even a mountain lion once, though they were supposed to be extinct in Arkansas. This was none of those. This was something else. He found the second dog 20 feet further in. Same breed, same wounds, same missing brain. The third dog was still alive when he found it. It was dragging itself across the leaves, its hind legs useless, its spine broken. It looked at Dale with eyes that were still aware, still terrified, and it tried to whine, tried to bark, but all that came out was a wet gurgle. Dale did what he had to do. He didn't like it, but he had seen enough suffering to know mercy when it was required. 1 shot, clean, and the dog was still. He stood over the body, his hands shaking, his mind racing. 3 dogs. 3 expensive hunting dogs, dead or dying, killed by something that didn't eat the meat, didn't take the trophies, just destroyed. And where was the hunter? He found the answer 50 yards further on, in a clearing where the moonlight could reach the ground. The hunter was there, or what was left of him. Dale didn't get closer than 10 feet. He didn't need to. He could see enough from where he stood. The man was dead, had been dead for hours, though the blood was still wet. He was lying on his back, his arms spread wide, his chest cracked open like the dog's. But his face was intact, frozen in an expression of such pure terror that Dale had to look away. The eyes were open, staring at the sky, and the mouth was open too, caught mid-scream. The scream he had heard. 4 seconds of absolute horror, cut off not by death but by something worse, by the removal of the brain that had generated the scream. Dale backed away, slowly, carefully, his radio at his lips. "Dispatch, this is Whitaker. We have a 1054, possible homicide. I need the sheriff, I need backup, I need." He stopped, because he heard it now. The sound that had been there all along, underneath the wind, underneath the silence. Thump, thump, thump. Something was hopping, something big, moving through the woods with a gait that was wrong, all wrong, too long, too silent between impacts. Dale turned slowly, his flashlight sweeping the trees. He saw it for just a moment. A shadow between shadows, a shape that shouldn't exist, tall, gaunt, standing on legs that were too long, too thin, jointed wrong, and the head. He didn't see the head. The shadow moved, hopped, and was gone, swallowed by the darkness, leaving only the smell, wet fur, musk, and underneath it all, the copper-sweet scent of blood and brain. Dale ran. He wasn't proud of it, but he ran back to his truck, back to the radio, back to the world of light and order and things that made sense. He didn't stop until he was on the paved road, until the forest was behind him, until he could no longer feel the watching presence that had been there in the clearing, studying him, deciding whether he was worth the effort. He had seen something impossible. And he knew, with the certainty of a man who had spent 30 years in these woods, that it would not be the last time. Dr. Lena Cruz arrived at the ranger station at 9:00 a.m., driving a rental SUV that was already covered in red Ozark dust. She was 28 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, wearing cargo pants and a shirt that said wildlife biology, because real science doesn't wear a lab coat. Dale met her at the door, looking like he had aged 10 years overnight. "Dr. Cruz." "Lena, please." She shook his hand, noting the tremor, the bloodshot eyes, the way he kept glancing at the tree line. "You look like hell, Ranger Whitaker." "Feel like it too." He stepped aside, led her into the station. "You want coffee?" "I want to know what killed 3 dogs and a hunter last night." Dale poured coffee anyway, black and strong, and sat down at his desk. The station was small, just 3 rooms, office, storage, and a cell that hadn't been used in years. The walls were covered in maps, photos of missing hikers, notices about fire danger. "The hunter's name was Bill Hendricks," Dale said. 54, from Little Rock. Came up here every fall for coon hunting. Good man by all accounts. Liked his dogs more than most people like their children." "And the dogs?" 3 Bluticks, best of the breed, cost him $5,000 apiece. Dale sipped his coffee, his hand still shaking. "I found them at 3:15 this morning, or what was left of them." "What do you mean, what was left?" Dale told her. The cracked ribcage, the removed organs, the punctured skulls, the missing brains. Lena listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from professional interest to concern to something that looked almost like excitement. "That's not normal predator behavior," she said when he finished. "No shit. Bears don't crack ribcage like that. They don't remove organs surgically. And they definitely don't," she hesitated. "They don't eat brains selectively." "So what does?" Lena pulled out her laptop, opened a file. "I've been tracking unusual predator activity in the Ozarks for 6 months. Mutilated deer mostly. Cracked ribcage, missing organs, same MO. But this is the first time it's targeted domestic animals. And humans." She turned the screen to show him photos. Dead deer, arranged in poses that were almost artistic, their bodies opened with precision that suggested intelligence, not just hunger. "I've seen this before," she said. "In Australia, there's a fossil predator called Eccletatada, a giant kangaroo, extinct for millions of years." "A kangaroo?" Dale's voice was flat, disbelieving. "In Arkansas." "Hear me out. Eccletatada was a carnivorous kangaroo, big, over 6 feet tall, powerful hind legs for hopping, but also she hesitated again, for killing. They had specialized teeth for shearing flesh, and they were smart. Pack hunters, possibly." "You're saying there's a pack of extinct Australian kangaroos hunting in the Ozarks?" "I'm saying something is mimicking their behavior, something with the same body plan, the same hunting strategy." Lena closed the laptop. "I need to see the site, the bodies." "The bodies are at the county morgue. The site—" Dale stood, walked to the window, looked out at the forest. "The site is still out there, and whatever did this, it's still out there too." "Then let's go." "Dr. Cruz, Lena, I don't think you understand what we're dealing with. I saw it last night. I saw something." "What did you see?" He told her, the shadow, the hopping, the wrongness of the shape. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Show me." They drove to the trailhead in silence, Dale's truck bouncing on the rutted forest road. The sun was high now, burning off the morning mist, but the woods were still dark, still full of shadows. The crime scene was cordoned off with yellow tape, a deputy standing guard looking bored and uncomfortable. Dale nodded to him as they passed, leading Lena into the trees. She saw the blood first. Dark stains on the leaves, still wet, attracting flies. Then the drag marks, the broken branches, the disturbed undergrowth. "It came from the north," she said, studying the signs. "Fast, the dogs didn't have time to scatter." "How do you know?" "Look at the spacing, the impacts." She pointed to depressions in the soft ground, places where something heavy had landed. "These are too far apart for a running animal. Whatever did this was hopping. Big hops, 20, 30 feet at a time." Dale felt the familiar chill from the night before. That's what I heard. Thump, thump, thump. Lena followed the tracks, Dale following her, until they reached the clearing where he had found the body. The body was gone, taken by the coroner, but the blood remained. A large stain, almost black in the shadows, surrounded by smaller spatters that painted a picture of violence. It took him down here, Lena said, walking the scene. Killed him quickly. Then, she knelt, examined the ground. Then it did something strange. It stayed for a while. Look at these marks. She pointed to indentations in the dirt, arranged in a pattern that was almost geometric. These are feet, large feet, 3 toes clawed, and these. She traced a circle around the pattern. These are tail marks. It was sitting here, resting, after the kill. Predators don't rest at the kill site, Dale said. They eat and run, or they drag the prey to a safe place. Exactly, Lena stood, her face pale. This thing didn't eat him, it just killed him, and then it sat here, watching, waiting. For what? For you, she turned to face him. You said you heard it hopping away. You said you saw it in the shadows. It could have killed you too. It was close enough. But it didn't. It let you live. Why? I don't know, but that's what worries me. Lena looked around the clearing, at the trees, at the shadows. It's smart. It's learning. It's studying us. And last night it decided you were worth keeping alive. Dale felt the weight of that, the responsibility. He had been chosen, somehow, selected for reasons he didn't understand. We need to find it, he said, before it decides to kill again. We need to understand it first. Lena pulled out her phone, checked the signal. I have equipment in my car, cameras, sensors, tracking collars. If we can get a visual, if we can study its behavior. You want to study it, after what it did to Hendricks, to those dogs. I want to stop it, but to stop it I need to know what it is. She met his eyes. Ranger Whittaker, I've dedicated my life to understanding predators, their behavior, their ecology, their role in the ecosystem. This thing, it's not natural. It's not part of any ecosystem I know. But it is behaving according to rules. It is making decisions, and if I can understand those decisions, I can predict them. I can trap it. Dale looked at the blood on the ground, at the trees where something had watched him the night before. And if you can't? Lena smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then we run, and hope it doesn't follow. They spent the day setting up equipment. Cameras on motion sensors, positioned around the clearing and along the game trails. Audio recorders to capture any sounds. A drone for aerial surveillance, though the tree cover was too dense for it to be really effective. Dale watched Lena work, impressed despite himself. She was thorough, methodical, treating this like any other research project despite the horror of what they were investigating. She didn't flinch from the blood, from the signs of violence. She just documented, analyzed, planned. By late afternoon, they had a perimeter established, a network of sensors that would alert them to any movement in the area. Now what? Dale asked. Now we wait. Lena sat on a stump, opened a protein bar. Predators are creatures of habit. If this thing hunted here once, it will hunt here again, especially if it thinks the area is safe. And is it safe? For us, maybe. It passed up a chance to kill you last night. That suggests it's not indiscriminately violent, it's selective, it chooses its targets. Lucky me. Lucky us. If it wanted us dead, we'd be dead, she chewed thoughtfully. The question is why? Why did it kill Hendricks? Why did it kill the dogs? And why did it let you live? Maybe I wasn't interesting enough. Lena laughed, a genuine sound that surprised them both. Maybe, or maybe you were too interesting. Maybe it wants to study you back. The thought was not comforting. They waited as the sun descended, painting the forest in shades of gold and red and finally purple. The temperature dropped, and Dale built a small fire, more for comfort than warmth. Tell me about this Eccletatica, he said as the stars came out. The kangaroo thing. Lena pulled out her laptop again, showed him reconstructions. They lived in Australia millions of years ago. the Pleistocene. They were carnivorous or at least heavily omnivorous. Big, 6 feet tall, maybe more. Powerful legs for hopping but also for kicking. Their forelimbs were strong too, with claws, and their teeth. She showed him a diagram. The teeth were terrible, shearing blades designed for cutting meat. But here's the thing, she continued. They weren't just predators, they were probably pack hunters, social, intelligent. They had to be to survive in the Australian outback. So you're saying this thing is smart? I'm saying it's potentially as smart as a wolf or a chimpanzee, smart enough to plan, to coordinate, to learn. And you think there are more than one? I think we need to consider the possibility. The attacks have been escalating, spreading across a wider area. One predator couldn't cover that much territory. Dale stared into the fire, thinking of the thump 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 in the darkness. Last night I only saw one. That doesn't mean there aren't others. Lena checked her phone, checked the sensor network. We should get some sleep. I'll take first watch. I'm not sleeping out here. Then neither am I. She pulled her jacket tighter. We'll wait together. They sat in silence, watching the darkness, listening to the forest. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the trees. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. Closer, something small moved through the undergrowth. A raccoon, maybe, or a possum. Normal sound, safe sounds. But underneath them, Dale could feel something else. A pressure, a presence. The sense of being watched by eyes that were too intelligent, too patient. "Do you hear that?" Lena whispered. Dale listened. At first nothing, then yes, a sound, distant, rhythmic. Thump, thump, thump. It's coming, Lena breathed. It's testing us. Testing us how? By letting us know it's there, by seeing if we run. She gripped his arm, her fingers tight. Don't run. Whatever you do, don't run. Running triggers the chase response. And if it attacks? Then we fight. She pulled out a canister of bear spray, held it ready. But I don't think it will, not yet. It's still studying us. The sound came closer. Thump, thump, thump. Heavy impacts far apart, the gait of something hopping through the forest with impossible speed and silence. Dale's hand found his sidearm, though he knew bullets wouldn't stop something that could crack a ribcage with a kick. The sound stopped, just stopped mid-hop, somewhere in the darkness beyond the firelight. They waited 1 minute, 2, 5. Then the scream. It was the same scream Dale had heard the night before, high, piercing, full of terror. But this time it wasn't cut off. It continued, rose higher, then modulated into something else. Something that sounded almost like. "It's laughing," Lena whispered. "Oh my God, it's laughing." The scream had become a cackle, a hyena-like sound that rose and fell in the darkness, full of malice and intelligence and something that might have been delight. Then silence again. They waited for an hour, neither speaking, neither moving. The fire burned low and Dale added wood, keeping the light alive, keeping the darkness at bay. Finally Lena spoke. "It's gone for now." "How do you know?" "Because if it wanted us, it would have taken us." She stood, her legs stiff, her face pale. "It was playing with us, testing our reactions, learning how we respond to fear." "And what did it learn?" "That we don't run." She looked at him and he saw respect in her eyes. "That we're brave or stupid or both." "Which means?" "Which means it will be back, and next time it won't be playing." She began to pack her equipment. "We need to be ready. We need a plan." "What kind of plan?" "A trap, something that can hold it, hurt it, kill it if necessary." She looked at the darkness where the sound had come from. "This thing is dangerous, Ranger Whitaker. More dangerous than anything I've ever studied. But it's not invincible. It can be killed." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." She shouldered her pack, started toward the truck. "Come on, we need to get back to civilization. Research, prepare." Dale followed her, but he paused at the tree line, looking back at the clearing. For just a moment he thought he saw something. A shape, tall and thin, standing on the ridge above the clearing, silhouetted against the stars. It was watching them, he was sure of it. And it was smiling. The research took 3 days. 3 days of phone calls, database searches, and consultations with experts who thought Lena was crazy until she showed them the photos. Dale watched her work, impressed by her dedication and disturbed by her conclusions. She had set up a command center in the ranger station, covering the walls with printouts, maps, timelines. The pattern was clear once you knew to look for it. The attack started 6 months ago, she explained, pointing to a map with colored pins. Small animals at first, raccoons, possums, deer, fawns, then larger prey, adult deer, coyotes. A black bear 2 months ago, cracked skull, brain removed. It's been escalating, Dale said. Exponentially, and the territory is expanding. She traced a circle on the map. It started here in the deep woods. Now it's ranging 20 miles in every direction. That's impossible. No predator has a territory that large. No normal predator. Lena pulled up a satellite image. Look at this. Thermal imaging from 2 nights ago. I had a friend at the university run it for me. The image showed the forest in shades of blue and red. And in the center, a bright red spot that was moving, hopping, covering ground at impossible speed. That's it. That's something. Something large, warm-blooded, moving in a pattern consistent with the hop stride we've been tracking. She zoomed in. But look at this. She pointed to a second spot, then a third, then a fourth. 4 heat signatures, all moving in coordination, converging on a central point. There are 4 of them, Dale breathed. At least 4, possibly more. They meet every few nights here. She pointed to a location on the map. An old mine shaft, abandoned in the 1920s. They're denning. Social behavior, pack hunting. Lena sat back, rubbed her eyes. This is worse than I thought, much worse. How do we stop them? We don't, not alone, we need help. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling in favors. Wildlife experts, hunters, anyone with experience dealing with dangerous predators. You think that will be enough? She looked at him, and he saw the fear she had been hiding. I think we need to try, because if we don't stop them, if they keep spreading, keep learning. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. The team assembled over the next 2 days. Dr. James Chen, a paleontologist from the University of Arkansas, who had studied echoltata and could confirm that the behavior matched the fossil record. Marcus Webb, a professional hunter who had tracked everything from wolves to feral hogs. And Sarah Kim, a wildlife veterinarian who specialized in large predators. They gathered at the ranger station, studying the evidence, arguing about strategy. We need to understand them before we can kill them, Chen insisted. He was 60, with white hair and a permanent stoop from years of bending over fossils. These creatures, if they are what Dr. Cruz thinks they are, they represent an evolutionary branch we thought was extinct. The scientific value is 0 if they kill us all, Webb interrupted. He was a big man, muscled, with a scar that ran from his ear to his chin. I've seen what they did to Hendrix, to those dogs. This isn't research. This is extermination. Can it be both? Lena asked. We trap one, study it, learn from it, then kill the others. And if trapping is impossible, Kim asked. She was small, quiet, but her eyes were sharp. If they're as smart as you say. Then we kill them all. Dale spoke for the first time in an hour. No research, no study, just dead. They looked at him. He was standing by the window, looking out at the forest, his hand on his sidearm. You've seen them, Chen said. It wasn't a question. I've heard them, I've felt them watching. Dale turned to face the group. These things aren't animals. They're not just predators. They're enjoying this. The fear, the hunt. They're playing with us. That's anthropomorphism, Chen said. Projecting human emotions onto. It's not, Lena cut him off. I heard it too, the laughing, it's learned to mimic us, to use our sounds against us. Then we use sound against them, Webb said. Lure them, trap them, kill them. How? Webb smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. I've hunted everything that walks, crawls, or flies in these woods, and I've learned one thing: everything has a weakness. Everything can be baited. And what baits a carnivorous kangaroo? Other kangaroos. Webb pulled out a device, a speaker connected to a laptop. I've been working with a sound engineer. We took recordings of kangaroos, red kangaroos from Australia, and modified them. Lowered the pitch, changed the timing. If these things are what you think they are, they should recognize the calls. You want to attract them? Kim asked. On purpose. I want to concentrate them, get them in one place. Then we hit them with everything we have. And where would this one place be? Dale asked. The mine shaft. Webb pointed to the map. If they're denning there, if they're meeting there, that's where they're vulnerable, away from the open forest, confined space. Confined space works both ways, Lena said. If we're in there with them, we can't run either. We won't need to run. Webb opened a case, revealing weapons. Rifles, shotguns, and something larger, a tranquilizer gun that looked like it could stop a rhino. We go in at dawn, set up the speakers, play the calls. When they come, we hit them with tranks first. If that doesn't work, he patted the rifle, we use lethal force. Dale looked at the weapons, at the maps, at the faces of the people who had come to help. And if they don't come, if they're smarter than that? Webb's smile returned. Then we go hunting. They approached the mine shaft at 5:00 a.m., moving through the forest in a line, weapons ready. The sky was lightening in the east, but the woods were still dark, still full of shadows. Dale led the way, his knee aching with every step, his eyes scanning the trees for movement. Behind him came Webb, carrying the speaker equipment. Then Lena, with her cameras and sensors. Chen and Kim brought up the rear, arguing in whispers about the ethics of what they were doing. The mine shaft was exactly where the thermal imaging had indicated, a dark hole in the side of a hill, surrounded by tailings and rusted equipment from a century ago. The entrance was large enough for a truck, the interior a black void that seemed to drink the morning light. This is it, Lena whispered, the den. How do you know? Chen asked. Smell, she wrinkled her nose, wet fur, musk, and something else, death. She was right. The air around the mine entrance carried the copper-sweet scent of old blood, of decay, of meals consumed and discarded. Webb set up the speakers at the entrance, positioning them to project into the darkness. Everyone ready. They checked weapons, checked equipment, checked each other. Play the calls, Dale said. Webb hit a button. The sound that emerged was alien, wrong, a series of grunts and clicks, and something that might have been a cough. It was kangaroo, supposedly, but modified, twisted into something that sounded almost like language. They waited. 1 minute, 2, 5. Nothing. Maybe they're not home, Kim suggested. Or maybe they know it's a trap, Lena said. Play it again, Webb commanded, louder. The calls repeated, amplified, echoing into the mine shaft. The sound seemed to go on forever, bouncing off walls that receded into darkness. Then an answer. From deep in the mine, a sound emerged, similar to the recording but different, lower, more complex, a response. It's working, Webb breathed. They're communicating. The sound came again, closer this time, and with it another sound, the thump-thump-thump of heavy impacts on stone. They're coming, Dale said, everyone ready. They raised their weapons, pointing into the darkness. The first one emerged from the shadows, like a nightmare given form. It was huge, over 7 feet tall when it stood upright, though it moved in a crouch, its forelimbs touching the ground. Its body was covered in patchy fur, mottled brown and gray, with places where the skin showed through, pale and scarred. Its head. Dale had seen it before in the darkness, but seeing it in the half-light was worse. The face was elongated, almost horse-like, with a mouth that opened too wide, revealing teeth that were wrong for any marsupial, long, curved, serrated. The eyes were the worst. Human-sized, positioned for binocular vision, full of intelligence and hunger and something that might have been amusement. It looked at them and it smiled. "Trank it," Webb ordered. Kim fired. The dart hit the creature in the shoulder and it flinched but didn't fall. It looked at the dart, pulled it out with one clawed hand and dropped it. "Shit," Webb said, "fire again." But the creature moved, fast, unnaturally fast. One hop 20 feet and it was among them. Dale fired his sidearm, the shots loud in the morning air. He saw hits, saw blood, but the creature didn't slow. A clawed hand swept toward him and he ducked, felt the wind of its passage, the brush of fur against his face. "Run," someone screamed, Chen maybe or Kim. "Run." But there was nowhere to run. The creature was between them and the forest, and behind it, emerging from the mine shaft, were 3 more. 4 of them, a pack, a family, a hunting party. They had walked into a trap, and the trap had closed. The fight lasted minutes that felt like hours. Dale saw Webb go down first, a clawed foot catching him in the chest, cracking ribs, sending him flying. The hunter hit a tree and didn't get up. Chen was next. He tried to run, stumbled, and the smallest of the creatures, a juvenile maybe, only 5 feet tall, landed on his back. The scream was brief, cut off by the puncture of teeth through skull. Kim lasted longest. She had a shotgun and she used it, firing again and again, the buckshot tearing chunks from the creature's flesh but not stopping them. They surrounded her, hopping in a circle, testing her, wearing her down. When she ran out of shells, they took her. Dale didn't see the end. He was running, his knees screaming, his lungs burning, his mind empty of everything but survival. Lena ran beside him. She had grabbed his arm, pulled him away from the chaos, and now they were sprinting through the forest with no direction, no plan, just the need to put distance between themselves and the screaming. Behind them, the creatures didn't follow immediately. They were busy with their kills, with their meal, but Dale knew they would come. They were hunters. They wouldn't let prey escape. "This way," Lena gasped, pulling him toward a ravine. "There's cover, caves." They scrambled down the slope, loose rocks sliding under their feet, branches tearing at their clothes. At the bottom they found what she had promised, a narrow cave entrance, hidden by brush, just large enough to crawl into. They squeezed through, into darkness, into safety. For now. The cave was small, cramped, barely large enough for 2 people to sit upright. But it was deep, extending back into the hillside, and the entrance was narrow enough that the creatures couldn't follow. Couldn't follow easily, Dale corrected himself. They could dig, they could wait, they were patient. "We need to call for help," Lena whispered. She had her phone out, but there was no signal. "We need to get to higher ground. We need to stay alive until nightfall." Dale checked his weapon. 2 shots left, not enough to stop one of those things, let alone 4. "Then we move. They're going to hunt us." Lena's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "You know that. They're not going to give up." "I know. Webb's dead, Chen's dead, Kim." She didn't finish. "It's just us now." "I know. What do we do?" Dale thought about it, thought about the creatures, their behavior, their intelligence. They were smart. They were learning. They had let him live once for reasons he didn't understand. "We use what we know," he said finally. "They're curious. They study their prey. They don't just kill, they learn. So we give them something to learn, something that confuses them, something that makes us not worth the effort." "How?" Dale smiled, and it was a hard smile, full of pain and determination. "We become predators too." They waited in the cave until the sun was high, until the sounds of feeding had stopped, until the forest was silent again. Then they emerged cautiously, weapons ready. The clearing where the attack had happened was empty. The bodies were gone, dragged into the mine probably to be consumed at leisure. But the creatures had left signs, tracks, scat, territorial markings. Dale studied them, his years as a ranger taking over, his mind cataloging the information. "They're ranging," he said, pointing to the tracks, "spreading out, hunting." "Looking for us," Lena added. "Yes, but also," he frowned, following a set of tracks that led away from the mine. "Also exploring. They're expanding their territory, learning the area. We need to get to the ranger station, radio for help. We need to survive first." Dale looked at the sun, calculated the hours until dark. "They hunt at night. We have maybe 6 hours to find shelter, find weapons, find a way to fight back." "Fight back with what? You have 2 bullets, I have a knife." "We have the forest." Dale started walking, not toward the ranger station but deeper into the woods. "We have knowledge. We have traps if we're smart." "Traps?" "Old mining equipment, abandoned structures, natural hazards." He looked back at her. "These things are strong, fast, smart, but they're not invincible. They can be hurt. They can be killed." "How do you know?" "Because Kim hurt them before they took her. I saw blood. I saw them flinch." He kept walking. "They're flesh and blood. They can die." Lena followed him, her mind racing. She had studied predators her whole life, but she had never been prey. She had never felt the hot breath of something hungry on her neck, never known the certainty that she was being hunted by something that enjoyed the chase. It changed things. It changed everything. They found the old cabin at 3:00 p.m. It was a hunting shack abandoned for decades, barely standing. But it had walls, a roof, and most importantly, a cellar. "We can fortify this," Dale said, inspecting the structure. "Board the windows, block the door, make them work to get in." "And then what? Wait for them to break through?" "No," Dale was already moving, gathering materials. "We make them pay for every inch. We hurt them. We make them decide we're not worth it." They worked for 2 hours, using old lumber, rusty nails, anything they could find. The cabin became a fortress, or as close to one as they could manage. As the sun began to set, they retreated to the cellar, pulling the trapdoor closed above them, wedging it shut with a beam. "Now we wait," Dale said. "For what?" "For them to make a mistake." They didn't wait long. The thumping started at dusk, distant at first, then closer. The creatures were moving through the forest, searching, hunting. "They know we're here," Lena whispered. "They know we're somewhere, they don't know exactly where." Dale checked his weapon one more time. "Stay quiet, stay still, let them pass." But the creatures didn't pass. The thumping circled the cabin once, twice, then stopped. Silence. Then the scream. It was close, right outside the walls. The same scream they had heard before, the woman's voice full of terror. "It's mimicking," Lena breathed. "It's trying to draw us out." "Don't listen, don't respond." The scream came again, closer, more desperate. Then another voice, Webb's voice, calling for help. Then Chen begging for mercy. Then Kim screaming Dale's name. "They learned," Lena realized. "From the recordings, from us. They're using our voices against us." "Don't listen," Dale repeated, but his voice was strained. The screaming continued. A chorus of the dead, calling to them, pleading with them, promising salvation if they would just open the door, just come out, just surrender. Dale put his hands over his ears, but he could still hear it, still feel it. The temptation to respond, to help, to end the suffering. "Make it stop," Lena whispered. "Please make it stop." He couldn't. He knew he couldn't. The only way to make it stop was to go out there, to face them, to die. And then suddenly it did stop. The silence was worse than the screaming. Heavy, expectant, full of waiting. "What are they doing?" Lena asked. "Planning," Dale said. "Adapting." He was right. A moment later they heard it, a sound like tearing wood, like claws scraping against the cabin walls. The creatures were testing the structure, looking for weak points for ways in. The roof, Dale realized. They're going for the roof. They heard the impacts above them, heavy thuds as something large landed on the cabin. Then the sound of tearing, of wood splintering. "They're in," Lena said. "They're in the cabin." But not the cellar, not yet. Dale pointed to the trapdoor where dust was falling from the impacts above. "We have time." "For what?" "For this." Dale pulled out his lighter, held it up. "The cabin is old, dry, one spark and it goes up like paper. We'll burn with it." "No." He pointed to a corner of the cellar where a narrow tunnel led deeper into the hillside. "Mining shaft. It connects to the ravine. We can escape while they burn." "And if the tunnel collapses?" "Then we die either way." Dale looked at her, and she saw the determination in his eyes. "But I'd rather die trying than die waiting." She nodded. "Do it." Dale lit the beam that held the trapdoor, then the walls, then the stairs. The old wood caught quickly, flames spreading with terrifying speed. "Go," he shouted, pushing her toward the tunnel. "Go." They crawled into the darkness as the cellar filled with smoke, with heat, with the sound of burning wood and screaming creatures. The creatures were burning. They were dying or they were fleeing. Either way, the trap had worked. The tunnel was narrow, claustrophobic, barely wide enough for them to crawl. The air was thick with dust and smoke from the burning cabin above, and they could hear the creatures screaming. Not the mimicked human voices now, but something else, something animal, full of pain and rage. Dale led the way, his flashlight cutting through the darkness, his injured knee scraping against the rough stone with every movement. Behind him, Lena followed, her breathing ragged, her hands shaking. "How far?" she gasped. "Don't know, these old mines. They connect, rabbit warrens." Dale's voice was strained. "Just keep moving." They crawled for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. The tunnel sloped downward, then leveled, then branched. Dale chose paths at random, guided by instinct, by the flow of air, by the desperate need to put distance between themselves and the fire. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit faded. The creatures weren't following. They were dealing with the fire or fleeing it or dying in it. But Dale didn't slow down. He knew, with the certainty of a man who had spent his life in these woods, that the creatures wouldn't give up. They were smart. They were patient. They would find another way. The tunnel opened suddenly into a larger space. A chamber, maybe 20 feet across, with a ceiling lost in darkness. Dale's flashlight revealed walls covered in old mining equipment, rusted tools, wooden beams that had rotted to the consistency of sponge. "Rest," he said, collapsing against the wall, "just for a minute." Lena sat beside him, her chest heaving, her face streaked with dirt and sweat. "We killed them. We had to have killed them." "Maybe," Dale checked his weapon, "still 2 shots. Or maybe we just pissed them off." "They were burning. I heard them." "I heard them too, but fire doesn't always kill, not something that fast, not something that smart." He looked at the tunnel behind them, the darkness that seemed to pulse with waiting. "They'll be back, and they'll be angry." "Then we keep moving, find the exit, get to the ranger station." "The ranger station is miles away, and they'll know that's where we're going." Dale closed his eyes, thinking, "We need another plan, somewhere they won't expect, somewhere we can defend." "Like where?" He opened his eyes, looked around the chamber. His flashlight caught something on the far wall, a sign, faded but legible. "Danger, unstable shaft, do not enter." "There," he said, pointing, "the unstable shaft." "You want to go into the unstable shaft?" "I want to use it." Dale stood, his knee protesting, and limped toward the sign. "Look." The shaft entrance was narrow, a crack in the rock barely wide enough for a person. But beyond it, Dale could see space, room, and something else. "Air flow," he said. Feel it, it's coming from somewhere, another exit. Or another dead end. Or that, Dale turned to her. But it's a chance, and right now it's the only one we have. Lena looked at the shaft, at the darkness, at the sign warning of danger. Okay, she said, but if we die in a cave-in, I'm blaming you. Fair enough. They squeezed through the crack into the shaft beyond. It was narrow, treacherous, the walls lined with loose rock that shifted and crunched under their feet. But it was going somewhere. Dale could feel the air moving, could smell something that wasn't dust and smoke, green things, growing things, the outside world. They walked for an hour, maybe more. The shaft twisted, turned, branched, and rejoined. Dale lost track of direction, lost track of time, lost track of everything but the need to keep moving. Then the shaft opened. They emerged into a ravine, a narrow cut in the hills that was choked with brush and young trees. Above them, the sky was visible, stars shining through gaps in the canopy. We made it, Lena breathed. We're out. Not yet. Dale looked around, orienting himself. We're on the wrong side of the ridge. The ranger station is that way, he pointed. 3 miles, maybe 4. Can you make it? I can make it. He started walking, limping but determined. Question is, can we make it before they find us? They moved through the forest as quietly as possible, Dale leading, Lena following. The moon was rising, casting silver light through the trees, making the shadows deeper and the dangers harder to see. Dale knew these woods. He had patrolled them for 30 years. He knew every trail, every game path, every hiding spot, and he knew that the creatures knew them too. They're hunting us, he said, pausing to listen. Not just chasing, hunting. They're thinking ahead, cutting off routes, anticipating where we'll go. How do you know? Because I would. He started moving again. If I were hunting something smart, something dangerous, I'd do exactly what they're doing. I'd think like them. I'd be them. So what do? We don't think like prey. Dale changed direction, heading away from the ranger station toward higher ground. We think like predators. We go where they won't expect. Where's that? Up. The ridge was steep, treacherous, but Dale climbed it with the determination of a man who had nothing left to lose. His knee screamed with every step, but he ignored it, focused on the goal. They reached the top at midnight. The view was spectacular, miles of forest in every direction, the lights of distant towns, the dark bulk of the mountains against the stars. And there on the next ridge, maybe 2 miles away, a fire. The ranger station, Lena said. It's burning. Dale felt his stomach drop. They knew that's where we were going. They got there first. Then where do we go? He looked around, desperate, his mind racing. The fire was spreading, consuming the dry summer forest, creating a wall of flame between them and civilization. The river, he said finally. The Mulberry River, it's in the valley. If we can reach it, follow it downstream. The fire will reach it too. But water stops fire, and the creatures, he hesitated, the creatures might not follow into water. Might not. It's all I have. They started down the ridge, moving fast, the fire behind them, the creatures somewhere in the darkness ahead. They reached the river at 2:00 a.m., stumbling out of the trees onto a gravel bar that shone silver in the moonlight. The water was low, summer low, but it was moving, alive, a barrier against the fire and maybe against the creatures. We follow it, Dale said, downstream to the highway. How far? 5 miles, maybe 6. And the creatures? Dale looked back at the forest, at the fire that was consuming the ridge behind them, at the darkness that was full of watching things. They'll follow, he said, but they'll be careful. They don't like fire, and they don't know if we have more tricks. Do we? He smiled despite everything. I might have 1 or 2. They started downstream, wading in the shallows, keeping to the water. The river was cold, numbing, but it was better than the dry land where the creatures hunted. They walked for an hour, maybe more. The fire was behind them now, a red glow on the horizon, but the danger was ahead. Dale could feel it, the presence of the creatures, the intelligence that was tracking them, studying them, waiting for the right moment. "They're close," he whispered. "How do you know?" "I can feel them." He stopped, looked around, his hand on his sidearm. "They're watching, deciding." "Deciding what?" "Whether we're worth it." The answer came a moment later, a scream from the ridge above, not the mimicked human voices now, but something else. A challenge, a declaration. "They've decided," Lena said. "Yes." Dale looked at the river, at the banks that were too steep to climb quickly, at the water that was too shallow to hide them. "We need to run." They ran, splashing through the shallows, stumbling on rocks, their breath coming in gasps. Behind them they heard the thumping, thump, 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 the creatures hopping along the ridge, keeping pace, herding them. "They're driving us," Dale realized, "towards something, a trap." "What do we do?" "We don't play along." He changed direction suddenly, splashing across the river to the other bank, climbing up into the trees. "We go where they don't want us to go." The creatures responded immediately, the thumping changing direction, converging on their new position. But Dale was ready. He had seen something, a flash of memory from 30 years of patrolling these woods. "This way," he shouted, pulling Lena toward a dark shape in the trees. It was an old logging road, abandoned for decades, overgrown but still passable. And at the end of it, visible in the moonlight, a structure. "The fire tower," Dale gasped. "The old fire tower." It was a relic from the 1950s, a 100-foot steel tower that had once been used to spot forest fires. It was rusted, dangerous, probably condemned. But it was high, and it was defensible, and it was their only chance. They ran toward it, the creatures closing in behind them. Dale could hear them now, could smell them, the wet fur, the musk, the copper-sweet scent of blood. "Climb," he shouted, pushing Lena toward the ladder. "Climb." She scrambled up, fast and agile, her fear giving her strength. Dale followed, his knees screaming, his hands shaking, his entire being focused on the rungs above him. They were 30 feet up when the first creature reached the tower. It looked up at them, and in the moonlight Dale could see its face clearly. The elongated snout, the too many teeth, the eyes that were full of intelligence and hunger and something that might have been respect. It knew they had outsmarted it, at least for the moment. It knew they had reached a place where it couldn't follow, not easily. But it also knew they couldn't stay there forever. The creature sat back on its haunches, its tail bracing it, and it waited. And from the darkness around the tower, 3 more shapes emerged, taking up positions, settling in for the siege. "They're waiting us out," Lena whispered. "Yes." Dale collapsed onto the platform, his chest heaving, his body spent. "They're patient. They can wait." "How long?" "As long as it takes." He looked at the sky, at the stars that were fading toward dawn. "We have maybe 3 hours until sunrise. Then." "Then what?" "Then we find out if they're afraid of the light." The hours passed with agonizing slowness. The creatures didn't move, didn't make a sound. They just sat, watching, waiting. Dale used the time to think, to plan, to prepare. The fire tower had been used for decades before being abandoned. There might be supplies, equipment, something they could use. He found it in a metal box, rusted shut but not impossible to open. Inside, flares. Old, probably unstable, but potentially useful. "Fire," he said, showing Lena. "They don't like fire." "We used that already." "And it worked." He checked the flares, found 3 that seemed intact. "We just need to make it work again." "How?" "We need to get them in one place, close together. Then we hit them with everything we have. And if it doesn't work, then we jump." He looked down at the ground 100 feet below. Better a quick death than what they'll give us. Lena was quiet for a moment. Then, there's another option. What? I could go down, distract them, give you time to get away. No. Dale, I'm serious. I'm younger, faster. I might be able to. I said no. His voice was hard, final. We're both getting out of this, or neither of us is. Then what's the plan? He looked at the flares, at the creatures below, at the sky that was beginning to lighten in the east. We wait for dawn, he said, and then we make them choose. The sun rose at 6:00 a.m., painting the forest in shades of gold and red. The creatures stirred, shifting positions, their eyes reflecting the light with a shine that was almost metallic. Dale watched them, studying their behavior. They were uncomfortable in the light, he realized. Not hurt by it, not weakened, but exposed, vulnerable. They hunted at night, he said. All the attacks were at night. They prefer the dark. So we use that. He stood, holding a flare in each hand. We give them a choice. Stay in the light and burn, or flee into the shadows and let us escape. You think they'll choose flight? I think they're smart enough to know when they're outmatched. He looked at her. Ready. She nodded, gripping the third flare. On 3, 1, 2, 3. They fired the flares simultaneously, the projectiles arcing down toward the creatures, bursting into brilliant magnesium fire that lit the clearing like daylight. The creatures reacted instantly, scattering, hopping away from the flames. But they didn't flee. They regrouped, circling, staying just outside the radius of the flares. It's not working, Lena said. They're not running. They're hesitating. Dale watched them, saw the indecision in their movements. They're not sure. What do? We convince them. Dale pulled out his sidearm, aimed at the largest creature, the leader, the one that had watched him from the beginning. We show them we can hurt them. He fired. The shot hit the creature in the shoulder, a lucky hit or a skilled one, and it screamed. A real scream, not mimicked, full of pain and surprise. The other creatures reacted, clustering around their wounded leader, protective, angry. Now, Dale shouted, the last flare into the trees. Lena fired the third flare, not at the creatures but at the dry brush surrounding the clearing. It caught immediately, flames spreading with terrifying speed. The creatures saw the fire, smelled the smoke, and finally they broke. They fled, hopping away into the forest, moving faster than Dale had thought possible, disappearing into the shadows. Go, he shouted, scrambling down the ladder. Go, go, go. They ran, away from the fire, away from the creatures, toward the highway that was somewhere in the distance, toward help, toward safety. Behind them the forest burned, and somewhere in the smoke and flames, 4 creatures watched them go, learning, planning, waiting for the next hunt. They reached the highway at 8:00 a.m., stumbling out of the forest onto the asphalt like refugees from a war zone. Dale's truck was there, parked where he had left it 2 days ago, untouched. He drove them to the nearest town, a place called Winslow that consisted of a gas station, a diner, and a sheriff's office that was closed on Sundays. He used the payphone outside the gas station to call for help, his voice hoarse, his hands shaking. The response was immediate and overwhelming. State police, wildlife officials, fire crews to contain the blaze they had started, and men in suits who didn't identify themselves but had the look of government agents. They were separated, questioned, debriefed. Dale told his story over and over, each time expecting disbelief, expecting accusations of madness. But the men in suits just nodded, took notes, and asked more questions. You said they were intelligent, one of them asked. He was young, with a crew cut and eyes that were too old for his face. How intelligent? Smart enough to hunt in packs, smart enough to use our voices against us, smart enough to, Dale hesitated, smart enough to enjoy it. The man nodded, made a note. And you believe there were 4 of them? I saw 4, there might be more. Why do you say that? Because they were learning, adapting. If there were only 4, they wouldn't be so confident. They wouldn't have attacked the ranger station. Dale leaned forward, his voice dropping. They're spreading, reproducing. Whatever they are, they're establishing a territory. The man closed his notebook, stood up. Thank you, Ranger Whittaker. You've been very helpful. That's it, you're just going to, what? Ignore this. We're going to handle it. The man smiled, and it was not a comforting expression. You don't need to worry about it anymore. And Lena, Dr. Cruz. She's being taken care of. The man moved toward the door. Get some rest, Ranger, you've earned it. He left. Dale sat alone in the room, his mind racing, his body aching. He knew what was happening. He had seen it before in other cases, other incidents. The cover-up, the suppression, the decision that some truths were too dangerous to be known. He found Lena 2 hours later, sitting in the diner, nursing a coffee that had gone cold. They told me to leave, she said without looking up. Go back to my university, forget everything. And will you? She looked at him then, and he saw the fire in her eyes, the determination that had carried them through the forest. No. Good. He sat down across from her, wincing as his knee protested. Because I found something, while they were questioning me. What? He pulled out a piece of paper, folded and refolded, covered in notes he had taken from memory. The creatures, the Ecoltadata. I started thinking about what they were, where they came from, and I remembered something. What? The 1950s, the Cold War, the government was doing experiments, biological experiments, testing things. He unfolded the paper, showed her his notes. There was a program, Project Hopper, classified, supposedly discontinued in 1962. Project Hopper. Hybrid organism program. They were trying to create biological weapons, animals that could be controlled, directed, used for reconnaissance or assassination. Dale's voice was low, urgent. They used kangaroos as the base. Something about the metabolism, the ability to go long distances without food or water. That's insane. Is it? Dale pointed to his notes. The program was shut down officially, but there were rumors, stories about specimens that escaped, that were released into the wild, that adapted. You're saying these things are government experiments. I'm saying they might be, or they might be descendants of experiments, or they might be something else entirely. Dale leaned forward. But the government knows about them, has known for decades, and they've been covering it up. Why? Because they can't control them, because they don't know how to stop them, because the truth would cause panic. Dale folded the paper, put it back in his pocket. But I don't care about the cover-up. I care about stopping them, and I think I know how. How? The mine shaft, where we found them, it's not just a den, it's a laboratory, or it was. Dale pulled out another piece of paper, a map old and yellow that he had found in the ranger station archives. Look, this is from 1958. The mine was closed in 1923, but in '58 there was a geological survey, government survey. They went deep, deeper than the original miners. And they found something, or they put something there. Dale traced a line on the map. There's a chamber below the main shaft, not on any official records, but I found references to it in the old files. Project Hopper, the breeding chamber. Breeding. They're not just hunting, Lena. They're reproducing, establishing a population. If we don't stop them now, there will be dozens by next year, hundreds in 5 years. Dale met her eyes. We need to go back. We need to find that chamber, and we need to destroy it. You're talking about suicide. I'm talking about finishing what we started. He stood, his knee aching but his resolve stronger. Those things killed my friends. They killed people I was supposed to protect, and they're going to kill more unless someone stops them. And that someone is us. That someone is anyone with the courage to try. Dale held out his hand. Are you with me? She looked at his hand, at the scars, at the determination in his eyes. "Yes," she said, and took it. They went back at dusk, not through the main entrance that would be watched, guarded, but through the tunnel they had escaped through, the narrow crack in the rock that led to the unstable shaft. Dale had prepared this time. Weapons, a shotgun, a rifle, a pistol, explosives, dynamite from an old mining supply cache he knew about, and knowledge, the map, the files, the understanding of what they were facing. Lena had prepared too. She had spent the day researching, calling in favors, finding information that the government had tried to bury. She knew things now about Project Hopper, about the experiments, about the creatures that made her wish she didn't. They weren't just trying to create weapons, she said as they crawled through the tunnel. They were trying to create soldiers, intelligent, adaptable, controllable. They used DNA from multiple sources, kangaroos for the body, wolves for the pack behavior, humans for the intelligence. Human DNA. That's why they can mimic us, why they understand us. They're part human, Dale, part us. The thought was horrifying. Creatures that were neither animal nor human, but something in between. Something that had the worst qualities of both. They reached the chamber, the large space where they had rested before. It was empty now, the creatures gone, hunting or hiding. But Dale could feel them, the presence, the intelligence that watched from the shadows. "This way," he whispered, leading her to a passage he had spotted on the map. "The breeding chamber is below." The passage was narrow, steep, descending into the earth. The air grew warmer as they went down, the smell stronger, musk, ammonia, the scent of animals in close quarters. They emerged into a space that made Dale's breath catch. It was huge, a cathedral of stone that had been hollowed out by design, not nature. The walls were lined with cages, rusted, broken, but still recognizable, and in the center a pit. The pit was full of bones. Human bones, animal bones, mixed together in a soup of decay that had been fermenting for decades. "My God," Lena whispered, "what is this place?" "A nursery," Dale said, his voice hollow, "a feeding ground." He pointed to the walls where scratches marked the stone, not random but deliberate. Writing, counting. The creatures had been keeping track. "They're smarter than we thought," he said, "much smarter." A sound from the darkness, the thump-thump-thump of heavy feet. "They're here," Lena breathed. "Yes," Dale raised his shotgun, "and this time we're ready." The creatures emerged from the shadows, all four of them surrounding the pit, blocking the exits. They had been waiting. They had known. The largest one, the leader, stepped forward. It looked at Dale and he saw recognition in its eyes, respect. "You came back," it seemed to say, though it made no sound. "We knew you would." "I'm here to end this," Dale said, his voice steady despite his fear. "All of it." The creature tilted its head, as if considering. Then it did something that made Dale's blood run cold. It spoke. Not words, not exactly, but sounds arranged in patterns, clicks and grunts that mimicked human speech. "End us," it said, the voice guttural, wrong but unmistakably intelligent. "Why end we, learn we, become. You've killed people. People kill we, hunt same. It's not the same." The creature moved closer, close enough that Dale could smell its breath, could see the intelligence in its eyes. "We are you," it said, "part you made from you. You fear us, we fear you." "Then let's end the fear." Dale raised the shotgun, "both of us." He fired. The blast caught the creature in the chest, knocking it back, sending it sprawling. It screamed, a human scream full of pain and betrayal, and the others reacted, converging, attacking. Lena fired her rifle again and again, the shots echoing in the chamber. One creature fell, wounded, dragging itself away. Another leaped, and Dale ducked, felt the wind of its passage, the brush of claws against his back. "The dynamite," he shouted, "set the charges." Lena scrambled to the wall, pulling the explosives from her pack, placing them at the weak points Dale had identified. The creatures saw, understood, and redoubled their attack. The leader was back on its feet, bleeding but furious. It lunged at Dale and he fired again, the shot catching it in the leg. It stumbled, fell, but kept coming, dragging itself forward with its arms. "Lena, now. I need more time." "We don't have more time." The creatures were on them, claws flashing, teeth snapping. Dale felt a pain in his shoulder, felt blood flow, felt the strength leaving his arm. "Go," he shouted, pushing Lena toward the exit. "I'll hold them." "No." "Go, set the charges, blow this place." She looked at him, tears in her eyes, then turned and ran. The creatures followed, but Dale blocked them, firing his pistol, using his body as a shield. He took hits, felt ribs crack, felt the world spin, but he held his ground. "Come on," he screamed at them. "Come on." They came. Lena ran through the tunnels, the creatures behind her, Dale's sacrifice giving her time. She reached the surface, gasping, and set the charges, connected the detonator, prepared to end it all. But she paused, because she could hear them, the creatures, not chasing her anymore, but talking, communicating, the clicks and grunts that were almost language. And she understood something. They were afraid, not of her, not of the explosives, of something else, something deeper. They didn't want to be what they were. They hadn't chosen it. They had been made, created, twisted into monsters by human hands. And now they were trapped, caught between what they were and what they had been made from. She thought of Dale, dying in the darkness. She thought of the people they had killed. She thought of the future, of the population growing, spreading, consuming. And she pressed the button. The explosion was deafening, the ground shaking, the mine shaft collapsing in on itself, burying the chamber, the creatures, the secrets of Project Hopper. Lena was thrown back, hitting her head, the world going dark. She woke in a hospital bed 3 days later. The doctors told her she had been found in the forest, unconscious, suffering from concussion and exposure. They told her she was lucky to be alive. They didn't mention Dale. They didn't mention the creatures. They didn't mention anything. She asked about the fire, the explosion. They told her there had been a gas leak in an abandoned mine. Tragic accident. One fatality, Ranger Dale Whitaker, who had been investigating reports of trespassers. She asked about the creatures. They looked at her strangely, suggested she might be suffering from PTSD, offered her counseling. She stopped asking. 2 weeks later, Lena sat in her apartment, staring at her field notes. She had drawn the creatures, sketched their teeth, their claws, their eyes, and she had realized something. The teeth matched fossil records of Eccletatta, but they also matched something else. The dental records from Project Hopper, the human DNA. She had been right in the cave. The creatures were part human, part animal, part something else. And they weren't all dead. The news report came on the television as she sat there. Forest fire contained. No bodies found. The official story. But underneath it, a different story. Reports from hikers. Sounds in the night. Screams that sounded like women being murdered. They had survived, at least some of them, and they were still out there, still hunting, still learning. Lena closed her notebook, poured herself a drink, and stared at the darkness outside her window. She could feel them watching. She knew they could feel her too. The game wasn't over. It had just begun. The farmhouse had been abandoned for years, the windows broken, the door hanging on rusted hinges. The forest was reclaiming it slowly, patiently. Inside, something moved. Something that hopped on legs that were too long, that breathed with lungs that were almost human, that thought with a mind that was learning, always learning. It found the bedroom, the old bed, the faded photographs on the dresser. A family, a mother, a father, a child. It picked up the photograph, held it with claws that were almost fingers, studied the faces with eyes that were almost human. Family, it whispered, the word guttural, wrong but clear. Want family. It looked out the window, at the forest, at the distant lights of the town. Find family, it said, make family. It hopped down the stairs, out the door into the night. The hunt continued. Thank you for listening to tonight's stories. If you enjoyed them, please leave a like and subscribe.